This is the Daily Tip on the BetQL network, presented by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas. Download the app today. Please gamble responsibly.
Good morning. Merry Christmas. Let's talk some sports. We got a lot of action today on a Christmas morning, an early Christmas morning as it is. I actually passed Santa's sleigh on the way into the studio this morning, so little shift change here. Santa's done working. And now I'm the sports machine, Sean Levine, with my guy. We got the fantasy exec himself. It is my guy, Corey Parson. And like I said, man, we got NBA, we got NFL. We now have an Elite Eight in college football. It is indeed the happiest time of the year.
No doubt, sports machine, and definitely glad to be with you this morning. You talk about seeing Santa's sleigh. Last night I was on some Woodford, and I had Temptation Silent Night on repeat. And I thought I saw Santa's sleigh this morning as well. So definitely looking forward to having a good time today. Kick back, talk some sports. And you mentioned, listen, Christmas Day once belonged to the National Basketball Association, which we do get some action today. But like you said, now we got NFL on Christmas. We got Beyonce on Christmas. We got plenty of college football action to talk about. So really a jam-packed show, and looking forward to chopping it up with you.
You're right. The NBA about a decade ago, Christmas became their holiday, the same way that Thanksgiving used to be the NFL's holiday, the same way that New Year's Day used to be college football's holiday. And now the NFL just takes and steals and from everybody whatever they want. Is it overload? I mean, it's Christmas. We've got plenty of NBA, as you mentioned, random bowl games. Do we need these NFL games today?
You know what? I think we always need the NFL. It's so interesting you mentioned about a decade ago. I can remember probably around the 2016, 2017, when people would say, oh boy, the NBA is starting to catch up with the NFL. As we see now, particularly with all the talk about the NBA ratings this year, that's not necessarily the case. But a decade ago, what we did see, sports machine, was the development of a great rivalry between LeBron James and Steph Curry. And here we are almost a decade later, and the NBA is still giving us LeBron James and Steph Curry. And don't get me wrong, we're not going to get a chance to see this matchup too many more times. We do get it today, but it's interesting how the NBA seems to have not been able to develop their young, talented stars, but we do get to see one today at around noon Eastern at Madison Square Garden.
So that Lakers-Golden State game that you mentioned, that Steph Curry-LeBron matchup, Golden State at home, a 3.5-point favorite, 223.5 is the over-under in that game. We'll talk about all five of these NBA games. We'll break down the props. We've got an early tip. I say early, still about 6 hours from us right now. That's the alien on Christmas. Victor Wembanyama taking his talents to New York City and Madison Square Garden. The Spurs, surprisingly, off to a pretty good start this year, Corey. 15-14. The Knicks, 19-10, but a big favorite this morning at home, 9.5 points. You're going to lay that big number against the Spurs?
Yeah, you know what? I am going to lay that number against the Spurs, and it is a big number. But here's what the thing about it is: the San Antonio Spurs have not been very good against the spread when it comes to playing in road games this year. And the New York Knicks have been able to do their job and be money makers at Madison Square Garden. So I am going to sit up here and lay the number. I'll probably lay 9 in this one right here. It'll be close. It'll be nip and tuck. Now, the Spurs have played better basketball this season. Wembanyama in his second year, and obviously, you know, the program they got down there in San Antonio, they weren't going to be bad forever. But when I look at this game, this noon tip-off right here, it kind of harkens back to, you know, even when the Knicks were in their lean years, which it seemed like they had 30 years of lean years. Trust me, as a guy who roots for them. Now, with that being said, right, you know, they still had the marquee Christmas Day matchup, mainly because Madison Square Garden is a great environment, particularly for watching basketball on television. And I can remember Giannis kind of having a breakout moment on a Christmas Day at Madison Square Garden. Can we see that this Christmas Day from Victor Wembanyama? He's in the MVP conversation this year. The guy's averaging 25 and 9 just about. So Wembanyama is starting to become what we believe that he would be. So he gets his first real big stage in his NBA career as he gets to travel to Madison Square Garden for Christmas Day. So I think if you are a fan of the NBA, this is going to be a must-watch because Wembanyama is somebody that the league is going to be selling us for years to come.
And he's better than I thought that he was going to be. I early on was saying, oh, this guy's just a string bean who's got to develop a jump shot. And then about midway through last year, I was like, maybe I'm a little bit off on this. And then he had that, was it a 45 or a 50-point game? And I'm thinking, all right, maybe I should recheck my stance. And then this year, as you said, man, averaging damn near a double-double, almost 25 and 10, not to mention the 4 dimes, the 2 blocks, and most importantly, has got his team over 500. They're not playing bad basketball, as I mentioned, 15 and 14. When I'm looking at his prop, 24 and a half, that's a big number. It's the highest scoring total on the board today of anybody in this Knicks-Spurs game. You can get Jalen Brunson at 23 and a half. How about Karl Anthony Towns? His number's all the way up to 23 and a half today also. He's been a perfect fit.
Yeah, no, obviously it started off a little bit slow in New York as they tried to figure out a way to gel the team, and obviously the fan base was kind of torn, losing such a popular player like Dante DiVincenzo. But Cat comes in as a New York City guy or a tri-state area guy, the big bodega, and you're starting to see where he is a player who has played with Tom Thibodeau before, been in that system, and we're starting to see that this Knick thing is starting to click. Third in the Eastern Conference right now, and obviously Cleveland and Boston are both off to great starts. You know, the Knicks are one of the better teams playing basketball today. Now, with that being said, this whole thing with Towns and the Knicks is all going to come down to what happens in the playoffs. Because let me tell you something about New York Knicks fans. They want to beat you 77-76. They want slow, grinded out, old school 1990s basketball. And when you get into the postseason and those rims get tight, is Karl Anthony Towns going to be able to stand up to the pressures of postseason basketball at Madison Square Garden? So everything he does in the regular season is all fine and dandy, is great. But if he is not showing up in the postseason and those big high-intensity games at Madison Square Garden, that kind of thought process of maybe Cat being too soft for the spot will start to rise up again. But right now, it's been a fantastic fit, and the Knicks look very good.
Shout out Anthony Mason, John Starks, that entire crew, man. Love that squad. All right, let's move on to the second tip-off today. We've got Luka Magic. That's at Dallas. Minnesota takes their 14-14 record against the 19-10 Mavericks. Mavericks laying 5.5 in this game, over under 221.5. This is a matchup of, you could argue, the two best young players in the NBA. This is Luka versus Anthony Edwards.
Yeah, no doubt, a good one right there. The NBA hit the nail on the head, putting these two young superstars against each other. Dallas comes into this one as a favorite, and Dallas has been good this season as a favorite. Minnesota, unlike the Knicks, have kind of struggled to put the pieces in place and get it together so far early in the season. We're seeing them, Julius Randle and Anthony Edwards, kind of getting their thing done. But you can see where the team is kind of still struggling in the games, like some chemistry. And what you have with the Dallas Mavericks sports machine, I mean, really, is the Mavericks are a team that's good enough to possibly be the Western Conference champions this year, but they're a team that can turn it on and turn it off. In a big-time matchup today, I think the Dallas Mavericks win the game. Laying that number will probably be a little bit tough for me. Maybe I'll come in on the side of the dog if I'm betting the game ATS against the spread. But I do think we get I'm kind of a mano moment with Anthony Edwards and Luka Doncic. Even though they got Luka down as a game-time decision, I'm sure he'll be there. And then we can't forget the magic that Kyrie Irving brings to the table as well. So I think this is going to be one of the more fascinating games of the day. Not the marquee matchup, but it's good to see Anthony Edwards in this primetime spot right here. He's a guy that the NBA is going to try to market and sell moving forward. And we all know how great Luka is. You know, one of the things that the NBA has a problem with is their young stars don't play in New York, don't play in LA, don't play in Boston. Their two best young players play in Minnesota and Memphis. And those are not the biggest media markets. When you sit down and watch Shaq and Charles do the pregame show, a lot of times you don't see the Memphis Grizzlies or the Minnesota Timberwolves. So the NBA got to do a better job of promoting their stars that are in these small markets. But Anthony Edwards and Ja Morant are two players with big personalities that can kind of help the NBA as they transition into a post-Steph LeBron era.
You know how you get that attention, CP? You win a championship. Because I remember people used to say the same thing about Denver and Nikola Jokic and that entire crew, and then they won the title, and then they were everywhere. So I agree with you. It seems like sometimes you wish that some of these guys did end up in New York, did end up in LA. Speaking of LA, Lakers later on tonight on the road against Golden State. You talked about that game for a second earlier. Early on in the season, both teams, they were hotter than Farrah Fawcett in a forest fire. Both these teams were playing great basketball early on, and then they've kind of came back down to the median. Lakers right now 16-13, Golden State 15-13. Over under in this game 223.5. Before we get too far into this game and into the weeds, how do you feel about the JJ Redick hire? Because early on, the Lakers and everybody was making a big deal out of it, and this is kind of where I thought this team was going to be. Probably a playoff team, but no better than like the 6 or 7 seed.
Yeah, I think you kind of nailed it. This is a middle of the road, maybe a little bit better than the middle of the road Western Conference team with an aging superstar and a player in Anthony Davis who can either be hit or miss. I don't think the Redick. I still haven't been able to put my finger on the Redick hire and how I think it's going to play out. You've seen some situations where it looks like he's making the right moves and putting the right pieces together, and then we've seen some situations where it doesn't look like he's doing it as so, and maybe he's a little bit in over his head on this one. Honestly, I think he will start to shake out. But here's what the problem breaks down to. When are the Los Angeles Lakers going to take their organization back from LeBron James? You saw when James was in Miami. Listen, you can go every place you want to go and call the shots and be the superstar player and the general manager. But when he was down there in Miami with Pat Riley, that didn't happen. And you've seen since he's left, Miami has been a team that's been able to continue to be successful. Cleveland, just over the past couple years, starting to get better. The Lakers, one of the great organizations in sports, you would never see them giving the reins over to a player, no matter who the player was. They was ready to get rid of, Shaq. They told Kobe he wasn't going to run the organization. Yet they let LeBron James come in here, hire his friend as a head coach, and bring his son on the team. This is the Los Angeles Lakers, one of the most recognizable brand in all of sports machine. It's not a good look for them.
Dude, they drafted his kid. Like, it's like that would be like Patrick Mahomes' son getting drafted if he never plays football just because he's his kid. It's like, hey, this guy's so good, we're gonna do him a solid. Hey, he's a legend. Jordan's kids didn't end up in the NBA. You're right. No. He has completely taken over that team, and the problem is they're at this stagnant point where they're not so bad that they're getting these really good draft picks, right? I guess Dalton Connect ended up being a pretty good pick. But they're not like a 20-25 win team, but they're not a 50-60 win team. They're right in the middle with LeBron James. They need to do something, right? They need to add a piece. And I said the same thing about the team they're playing later on today, the Golden State Warriors. And the guy is out there, right? Like, it feels like the Philadelphia experiment with Joel Embiid is coming to an end and is going to come to a crashing end here pretty quick. And I understand that it's difficult to trade superstars in the NBA. Even more difficult to trade them in the middle of the season. You got to match up the contracts. Embiid just got a 3-year deal. But come on now. We have to agree, Corey, that the whole process has got to be pretty much over in Philadelphia. And if you're Golden State or if you're the Lakers, I know it's a Hail Mary, man, but it's also Christmas, right? It's a time for Hail Marys. Yeah. And it feels like one of those teams should make the move and just hope that he stays healthy.
Yeah, which is a big hope right there. And you're right, the process ain't processing anymore. I mean, you look at this Philadelphia 76ers team that went through this tankathon year after year after year, and then they hit it with Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. And now Ben Simmons is almost out the NBA, one of the greatest crashes from a Hall of Fame track to really being a guy that you can't put on a roster right now. And then we see what's going on with Joel Embiid. This has been a massive disaster the past couple years. The process never even got to the Eastern Conference Finals. Let that sink in.
That's crazy. And we're now, a decade into the process. And it's not just all the draft picks with Markelle Fultz that they threw in there. And you mentioned Ben Simmons and a bunch of the other guys. Okafor, remember him? I mean, that was a long time ago now. So if you don't remember him, I don't blame you. But they also had Jimmy Butler in there for a while. James Harden in there for a while. Now you bring Paul George in. I mean, damn. It's not for lack of trying. They've done a lot of different things there to build around Joel Embiid. And at some point, I mean, right now, Joel Embiid is on path to become the Dan Marino, the Charles Barkley, the Patrick Ewing, the greatest, but he didn't ever win a championship. And it ain't going to happen in Philly. So if I've got a package that I can put together and I'm one of those West Coast teams, if I'm Golden State and I'm the Lakers, if I could convince Philly, hey, take Andrew Wiggins, Kuminga, and a future draft pick or something like that, then I actually think it would be a deal that would work out pretty well for both sides. We got a couple other NBA games to talk about on the other side. That is Philadelphia, Joel Embiid at the Boston Celtics. Boston an 8.5-point favorite. And then tonight, the nightcap, Denver on the road at Phoenix. What's up with the Suns all the way back to 500? They're a 1.5-point home dog tonight. What's up, home dog? What's up, Corey Parson? I'm the sports machine, Sean Levine. We'll be back on the other side right here on the BetQL Network.
This is the Daily Tip on the BetQL Network, presented by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas. Download the app today. Please gamble responsibly.
Merry Christmas to you. Happy Hanukkah. All of it and everything with Bill and Dave and Corey. It's me, the sports machine, Sean Levine, with you on the Daily Tip on a Christmas morning. CCP, I figure that the big guy, Santa Claus, was sick of the whole cookies and milk thing. So I don't know how basic you are. I don't know what you left him last night. Over here, we left him some brownies, some special brownies we left him, and some Red Bull, figuring that he's got a big night ahead of him. Did you get everything that you wanted for Christmas this year?
Yeah, I got everything I wanted for Christmas just about. I got, peace and, Santa Claus didn't do me too dirty this year. The kids were pretty much, my son is grown, and it was funny because my dad asked me last night, what'd you get your daughter? And I said, I made her Cash App ring, and that was good for her. Then he said, well, what about dating my son? And I was like, he's grown. He's 23 years old. And he was like, well, you still didn't get him anything? And I'm like, when I was 23 years old, nobody got me nothing. You know what I'm saying? You get to a certain point to where you're kind of on your own on Christmas. And if you're out there buying gifts for your 23-year-old children, you must have a much bigger heart than I do. But at 23 years old, no more Christmas lists. There's no Cash App ringing. Because what I expect, Sean, is his Christmas comes throughout the year when I get these late night texts. Hey, Dad, I need $10 for food.
Does the age for gifts cut off only at Christmas, or do you get them birthday presents?
No, birthday's out. No birthday present. No Christmas. It's over. Once you pass the age of 21 and you officially become an adult, no, he's not a kid. Yeah, he's still my kid, but he is not a child. That the gift giving part of development comes to an end at some point. Some say 18. I will at least go 21. But as you get really into high school, it starts to go down. We're not in prime gift giving anymore.
Bro, they even let you stay on your parents' insurance till you're like 26. So if you want to stop the gift giving then, I feel like that's a proper cutoff age. But before, that's questionable parenting. All right, let's get back into the NBA, and then we'll talk some football because we got a ton of action today, and you're in the right place right here on the BetQL Network. We talked about Embiid. Man, struggles. 10-17 for the Philadelphia 76ers team that finally thought they put the pieces together to win a championship. Like the team they're playing this afternoon, the Boston Celtics, they know how to win a title. 22-7, they're 8.5-point favorites. Embiid's number's a big one, as usual, 26.5. I hate playing that prop just because you never know. You're basically betting, is he going to finish the game or not, right? Or is something going to, is his knee or his ankle or his back going to get tweaked? I'm looking at Tatum's number at 25.5. The one I actually played is Tyrese Maxey, 22.5. Yeah. I think he goes off on Christmas.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one right here. You talk about young stars in the NBA, guys like, Anthony Edwards and having this Victor Wembanyama having this breakout moment in front of the big national audience. And I think you could have a special game from Tyrese Maxey today. Tyrese Maxey is now what the process is. The Philadelphia 76ers need to tear down the process and start over with Tyrese Maxey as a centerpiece. People came into this year looking at the Philadelphia 76ers as a team that can compete for the Eastern Conference title with Paul George and Joel Embiid, two players who historically are never available when the games matter most. We've seen Embiid struggle with his health in the postseason, and Paul George has also had a history of postseason health struggles when it comes to year after year. Now, Nick Nurse is one of the better coaches in the NBA, and I do think that they will figure out a way to get this together and at least make a push towards the end of this season and maybe sneak into that 8th seed. And like we said last year when the 76ers snuck in, the kind of talent they have on their roster, they could pick somebody off. It didn't happen last year. You had New Yorkers celebrating in their building, and they were loud and boisterous, and it was embarrassing. And I don't really think – I think that series last year against the Knicks broke the Philadelphia 76ers. They have to go in a different way. This is the problem, though. When you draft superstar talent and you don't make them play, when you say, oh, my foot is hurt, let them sit. When you let them sit, the way Philadelphia let Joel Embiid sit, they let Ben Simmons sit for all of those years, You develop a habit of the players don't believe they have to play. And that's exactly what's going on in Philadelphia. They didn't make Simmons and Embiid play when they were younger, and they learned some bad habits, and now they're paying for it. Listen, Sports Machine, I like to say that the Philadelphia 76ers are the Dallas Cowboys of the NBA. Legacy franchise, glitz and glamour, nothing to show for it when it comes to championship hardware. Oh, it's been a long time. I think they put up a valiant effort today, but this is Tyrese Maxey. This is Tyrese Maxey. I'll take 8.5 with Philadelphia, which would probably be the worst bet I make this as we come down the stretch of this year. But I do think Philadelphia will show some fight today, but it's on the hands of Tyrese Maxey. I like his prop as well.
Yeah, we got 6 days left now of this calendar year, and that might be your worst bet of the entire year. I mean, I feel confident with Philadelphia. You could give me 80. Well, I would take the 80, but 8.5. I need more than that in Boston, coming off a championship. That's a very festive place. I was there over Christmas last year. They're going to have that feeling in the Garden, man. I'm telling you, I can see that as an absolute blowout where Embiid, you play his prop because he has like 20 in the first half. The problem is they're also down by 20 heading into the fourth quarter, and he's just on the bench like he often is. So I'm nervous to play really any props in that game. I've already got an overs play at 223.5, and like I said, I've played that Maxey over at 22.5 points. Before we get into football, let's talk about the last NBA game of the day. The Nuggets got off to a slow start, a la the 76ers, and they've turned it around. That's the thing. You mentioned you think the 76ers will end up backing their way into the playoffs eventually. It's a long season, my guy. All they got to do is play 2 weeks of good basketball, and they're back to 500. Denver is at 16-11. Speaking of 500, they're on the road against the 14-14 Phoenix Suns. Phoenix just, I don't know if it's a Durant problem or a Beal problem. Devin Booker is not going to be there tonight for tonight's game, so that's going to make it a little bit more difficult if you're betting on the Phoenix side. Phoenix is a home underdog, plus 1.5. The over-under 233.5. Before we talk Nuggets, does it ever feel like it's going to happen for this particular group of Phoenix Suns?
No. It would have happened if they would have kept Monty and the core together that they built with Booker and Bridges and Ayton. That
team was up 2-0 against the Bucks in the championship 4 years ago.
It's just unbelievable why they would tear that down. But this is what happens in the NBA. People chase superstars. You went and you chased Kevin Durant. You sold the farm for Kevin Durant. And now you broke up the core of your team. Now you're basically a team of stars and scrubs. You're trying to put it back together. Then they go and get Bradley Beal, who everybody knew. When Bradley Beal was last in Washington, Kyle Kuzma was outplaying him. So you go get these big-name superstars, and then you deplete your bench, and then you're one Kevin Durant injury away from being in the play-in tournament. You see this all the time. The Brooklyn Nets did the same thing. When the Nets were in the bubble, they shocked. Everybody's like, oh, my God, the Brooklyn Nets, we didn't think this was going to happen. They go and trade the form and bring in Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, and now they're back to the bottom of the Eastern Conference. I don't understand it. This is one of the problems with professional basketball. Stop chasing stars. Stop making a team of individuals. You need to build teams. That's what wins championships. That's what they did in Denver. They built a team. That's what they're doing in Memphis. They built a team. Same thing goes for the Boston Celtics. When you build teams, you win. When you chase big names and superstars, you win the play-in tournament, like the Atlanta Hawks are every year. I hope we don't ever get to the point where we see the Atlanta Hawks on Christmas. I don't know what made me think about the Atlanta Hawks just now, but can you imagine if you would have to sit down on this holy day of sports and watch the Atlanta Hawks and Trae Young? Sorry, Atlanta sports fans, I don't know where that came from, but you don't want to be in the play-in tournament every year like the Atlanta Hawks and the Chicago Bulls, but that's where the Phoenix Suns are headed.
Dude, they gave us the Philadelphia 76ers on Christmas. I'd rather see the Atlanta Hawks. Give me some Trae Young out there in that game. I think they'd make it closer than Philly will, and you bet Philly. That's Corey Parson.
True.
I'm the sports machine, Sean Levine. I'm with you. This day and age in the NBA, I think that's actually a really good point that you make. It's not about being top-heavy. This is not fantasy basketball. This is real world. So, yeah, it's cool when you got a Jaylen Brown and a Jason Tatum at the top, But then you've also got a Derek White. You've also got veterans like Al Horford. You've also got three-point shooters. You've also got rebounders and screen setters and goons coming in off the bench. There's just a perfectly built team. That's how you have to win a championship, a lot like Denver. Philadelphia just feels like a team, as you said, very top-heavy, kind of like the Phoenix Suns, very top-heavy, where there's not a whole lot of a safety net. They're probably both going to end up ultimately in the playoffs, but then how far are they really going to go? I'm looking at Kevin Durant's prop in this game, dude. It's the highest of any player today, 31.5. Jokic's player prop is pretty high, too, as expected, 29.5 points. And then you got Bradley Beal at 20.5. Do any of those jump off the page at you this Christmas morning?
I may go under on Jokic because he can really spend a lot of his time as a facilitator. So when you're counting on Jokic to put up big point numbers, it seems like it can be a little bit gaudy. Now, this could be a game, obviously a more high-profile game, where you could see him try to score the basketball more. But he's proven time and time again he's fine with being a facilitator on that team. Now, we know Durant is going to put up a lot of shots. And if that shot is wet and it's falling, then you're going to see a case where Durant could go over that number. But let me tell you something. These props are very sharp. They're spot on. So you can see Durant, miss it by a point to a point and a half, and then you sitting there waiting on that last basket to bring home your Christmas night parlay, and then you're going to wish you cashed out a couple of hours ago. I would go under on Jokic. And then you got to understand, too, on a day like today, when everybody's in front of the TV and everybody's got their app out, let me tell you, Joe Schmo is not betting the under. Joe Schmo is betting the over. So you may want to have some unders in your portfolio, and I think Jokic is an under you may want to key in on.
Did you say everybody has their app out or their ass out? I didn't know how y'all do Christmas over there. I was okay. All right, just making sure.
Now let's transition to Netflix.
We will get to that a little bit later on because we do have a couple of Netflix NFL games, something that I never thought that I was going to say. We'll talk more about those games on the other side. That's the Chiefs laying 3 on the road at the Pittsburgh Steelers, Ravens at Texans. Before we dive too deep into that, can all 4 of those teams ultimately win the Super Bowl?
That's interesting right here. That's a very good question. When you look at, the Houston Texans? No chance. The Houston Texans would be eliminated. Huh?
Pittsburgh? You buying into Pittsburgh at all? I'm talking long shots here. We're talking 40-1 for both those teams to win it all.
Boy, no, neither one of those teams. Both of these teams will not. I think you know what the AFC Championship game is going to be. You can have different opinions about the NFC Championship game, but I think we know what the AFC Championship game is going to be. It's just a matter of where it's going to be played at, probably where it's always played at. and is it going to get the 3:30 or is it going to get the 3:30 spot or the 6:30 spot? But we know we are headed for a clash of the Titans in the AFC. And I think it's going to be interesting how we get there this year, though, right? Because I think things that we knew to be certain, like Justin Tucker, I wouldn't be surprised if the Baltimore Ravens season ended on the foot of Justin Tucker. And I think when you look at a team like the Pittsburgh Steelers, I think when they step up in competition, and I'm not talking about the Houston, Pittsburgh needs to win the division. And then they'll go to Buffalo and get the doors blown off of them.
We'll see. I think Pittsburgh's been a surprising team all year long. If they did have to go to Buffalo, I actually think the game would be closer than you're talking about. Pittsburgh obviously used to playing in those conditions. Mike Tomlin's proven to be a great coach. Russell Wilson has worked out way better, I think, than even probably he or the team expected. I honestly felt like this offseason there were a couple of teams at the quarterback position that were just throwing stuff against the wall and seeing if anything stuck. The Atlanta Falcons, they were like, all right, let's see what happens with Kirk Cousins, and then we'll also draft Michael Penix Jr. and see if somebody's really good or gets hurt or sucks. It turns out that one of them sucks, and they put the rookie in, so that one kind of figured itself out. And then with the Russell Wilson situation with Justin Fields, I think they kind of did the same thing, where they were like, all right, let's just see what we have. And Russell Wilson was kind of injured to start the season, so they put Justin Fields out there and won some games. It's kind of worked out okay in Pittsburgh and in Atlanta. Overall, though, the quarterback situation, very interesting in the NFL, particularly today. We got some good ones. Chiefs and Steelers, Ravens and Texans. Chiefs laying 3 on the road. Ravens also a road favorite coming up later on today. Coming up on the other side this Christmas morning, let's play a game of bet it or forget it. Here's the rules. You either bet it or forget it. I'd like to keep it simple. I'm a simple guy. That's Corey Parson. I'm the sports machine, Sean Levine, with you this Christmas morning. We appreciate you checking us out on the Daily Tip right here on the BetQL Network.
This is the Daily Tip on the BetQL Network, presented by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas. Download the app today. Please gamble responsibly.
Merry Christmas. Welcome back into the BetQL Network with Corey Parson. I am the sports machine, Sean Levine. Before we play a game of Bet It or Forget It, you were talking about the NFC and how wide open it is. Are we talking about a 3-horse race, a 4-horse race? Can teams like, I don't know, the Minnesota Vikings, are we talking about them actually capable of getting to the Super Bowl out of the NFC?
Yeah, I think it's a 3-horse race. I think it's Detroit, Philadelphia, and I'm going to put the Minnesota Vikings in that mix as well. And listen, the Packers are starting to play very good football as well. It's just a matter of how these games are going to shake out, who has the home field advantage, and what coaches make the wrong decision. In the AFC, we got legendary Hall of Fame coaches. In the NFC, we got some guys that could make some poor decisions. Dan Campbell, I'm pointing at you. Now, with that being said, I think Detroit is the odds-on favorite, and for good reason so. But I think this Minnesota Viking team is going to be very tough. They're very good defensively. They can run the football well. It's just a matter of, can you get Darnold not to turn the football over? They're very well coached. I think Minnesota is going to be a tough out. And they can go outside to Philadelphia and play with them. And obviously, they're familiar with playing against the Detroit Lions.
As if this season hasn't been difficult enough on Chicago Bears fans, Caleb Williams been a little bit disappointing. Probably been, if we're just going to call a spade here, the worst of all of the first-round rookie quarterbacks. I mean, Bo Nix has had a better season. Drake May looks like he's the real deal. Obviously, Jaden Daniels is going to be the offensive rookie of the year. He's like minus $1 billion right now at BetMGM, so that thing's all but wrapped up. I mean, you talk about all the rookie quarterbacks that were drafted in the first round. Most of them have actually shown out pretty well, especially Bo Nix. So he's going to take his team to the playoffs, looks like, this year. And then you got Caleb Williams, and you just talked about 3 teams in that division, CP, that you think have a chance to win the Super Bowl this year. You kind of threw Green Bay in there, Minnesota and Detroit. I mean, not only was it a tough year as a rookie for Caleb Williams, got the coach fired, all that stuff in Chicago. Going forward, man, I think that Detroit, Minnesota, and Green Bay are all going to be pretty good.
Yeah, and it's going to take Chicago a while to catch up, but they got to make the right decisions this offseason. And they probably got to fire the general manager and get him out of there as well, and get the correct head coach in there, get the correct offensive coordinator in there as well. What you're seeing in successful situations, Dan Quinn, Cliff Kingsbury coming in and coached a young quarterback. Sean Payton ran Russell Wilson out of Denver, took all the Walmart people money, and then the next year went and got his quarterback and is coaching them all the way to the playoffs and a possible rookie of the year. And then you look at the situation with J.J. McCarthy. If he didn't get hurt, he would also been having a good season because he is led by a good young head coach who knows offense and can coach the quarterback. In Chicago, they thought that Shane Waldron can coach the quarterback. That's why the quarterback don't look good.
Sometimes you got to look at the organization and go, damn, there's a lot of stank on that Bears organization when it comes to developing a quarterback. They've literally never had a franchise quarterback. You can look at the Jets, right? Look at the success that Sam Darnold and guys like that have. The minute that they end up leaving there, that's more of a Jets problem. Look at Cleveland. Look at Baker Mayfield, right? Is it a them problem or is it a me problem? At some point you have to ask yourself. And I mean, Baker Mayfield would be the perfect quarterback right now for the Browns. Sam Darnold would be the perfect quarterback right now for the Jets. And both those teams just got impatient, paid other guys a lot of money, and it's not working out great. Although it is working out great for one guy that made a lot of money this offseason. That's Saquon Barkley. Let's play a game of Bet It or Forget It. He's not the favorite to be the MVP. He's third in line, but I can get you 15-1 odds as we wake up this Christmas morning on BetMGM. Saquon to be MVP. Bet it or forget it. 15-1 odds.
Yeah, I would bet it because normally what you would see if a running back goes over that 2,000-yard threshold, which Saquon Barkley could possibly get to this year, that's normally pretty high grounds for a running back to win the most valuable player award. I believe the last time a running back won, Adrian Peterson, that remarkable year where he ran for over 2,000 yards. A lot of what Saquon Barkley has done this season has been compared to what Adrian Peterson did that season. So if Barkley can finish up strong, and he's got the Dallas Cowboys' horrific run defense, even though Shout out to Mike McCarthy. That Cowboy team is fighting for him. And he's probably going to get that job back, which nobody would have thought that going into the year. But I would buy a 15-1 Saquon Barkley MVP ticket. He has been the best player outside of the guy who might win it.
Yeah, right now the guy who's the odds-on favorite to win it is Josh Allen at minus 400. You can get a Lamar Jackson ticket to win his third MVP at plus 350. Jared Goff still on the board, a long shot at 25-1. With Saquon, remember back when Kevin Durant said, my mama, she's a real MVP. I think that Saquon is the real MVP, like you said. I think when the playoffs come around, the Eagles, the league is going to realize just how important, just how much of a difference maker he is for a team in Philly that was going to be really good. I think they're great because they have Saquon. I don't know if we're going to realize that until the postseason comes around. So I'm going to forget it. I'm not going to actually bet my hard-earned money that he's going to win the real MVP, but I do think he's the real MVP. How about Coach of the Year? They never give this one to the right guy. Bill Belichick should have probably won this award 10 different times. You can get my guy Andy Reid right now at 10-1. So you're saying there's a shot. Bet it or forget it. Andy Reid, Coach of the Year.
I would forget it. When people look at those situations like that with coaches like Andy Reid, Mike Tomlin, Bill Belichick as, well, those guys are supposed to be there. Those are the good head coaches. Andy Reid's a walking Hall of Famer. And you're right. It's not fair that they get overlooked for the Kevin Seiferts of the world. But this award normally goes to that coach that came out of nowhere to bring a team up, guys like Dan Campbell.
Then call it that. They need to rename it that. They need to rename it the coach compared to what we thought his team was going to be, and he did a whole lot better than the Coach of the Year, because you just said, I mean, Mike Tomlin, though, would you put money on him? He's been great this year.
He has been fantastic. The only like legendary head coach or, established type head coach that we think can do it that I would put something on would be Sean Payton. I think Sean Payton has done the best job considering the rookie quarterback. And what was their win total coming into the year? Was it 6 or 7? So I think Sean Payton is really impressed. So I would say that Sean Payton has been the best head coach in the NFL this year.
I ain't mad at you. Yeah, the Broncos number was 6.5 at the beginning of the year. I remember just kind of piling them in there with the AFC West, like at the bottom. I thought the Chargers were going to be pretty good. Obviously, we all knew how good the Chiefs were going to be. But I said that the Broncos and the Raiders, I just remember putting them at the bottom and not talking much about them. The Raiders are who I thought they were, as somebody once famously said. And the Broncos, as you point out, are significantly better. So if you want to bet a Sean Payton ticket for Coach of the Year, I ain't mad at you. Right now, the favorite is Kevin O'Connell. That's actually the one that I like at minus 250. I mean, for a team, again, that was supposed to be average and has a chance to be the number one overall seed, get a bye, get to a Super Bowl, damn, you want to talk about overachieving, and that's what they like for this award. Dan Campbell's plus 250, Dan Quinn 10-1, and then our boy Mike Tomlin, and they might get him the award. It's been a while, a long shot, 20-1 odds. How about comeback player of the year? No surprise, Joe Burrow's a heavy favorite at minus 550. I'm looking at Sam Darnold, though, as a live wire at 4-1.
Now, that's very interesting. When it comes to Burrow and Darnold, obviously everybody wanted this award to go to Aaron Rodgers. That has not been the case. That New York Jets team has been terrible. And Rodgers has not been all of that bad, but he hasn't been comeback player of the year. He hasn't had the season that Joe Burrow had. This is Joe Burrow's award. But let's get creative, right? What about I'm quite sure he's not listed, but what about Bryce Young? Can you be the comeback player in the same year that you need to come back from? And that's what's happening with Bryce Young. He was terrible to start this season, and over the past 6-7 weeks, I'm looking at Bryce Young as a guy who's helped turn this Carolina Panther franchise around. He looks like he's going to hang in there and not get run out of town. I think we got to give a hand clap to Bryce Young for what he has done. If I'm not mistaken, over the last 8 weeks, this team is 6-2 or 7-1 against the spread. The Panthers have become money makers off the right arm of Bryce Young.
And nobody's paid attention to him except for you. That's why we love you, CP, because, Carolina, usually you see them on the board and you're like, all right, what's the line? I'll bet against them. And it's not about winning or losing when you've got money on the game and you don't give a damn about the team. It's about covering. So, Carolina has been good recently against the spread, 6-2. In their last 8 ATS, you point out Bryce Young has been, he didn't set the bar very high. You know what I mean? So he has been better than he's been in the past. How about the big game, the Super Bowl? I can get you the Philadelphia Eagles. The Lions are the favorite right now. at 4-1 at BetMGM this Christmas morning. How about the Eagles? Bet it or forget it, 6-1 to win the ring.
I'm going to forget the Philadelphia Eagles. 6-1 is too short of a number. I would think Philadelphia should probably be double digits. And yeah, they've gone on that big winning streak. And Philadelphia hasn't really played the toughest schedule this year either. And Saquon Barkley bailed them out against the Saints. He bailed them out in that first game against the Commanders. I just think that there is still something in Philadelphia that's not right with that head coach and that quarterback combination. And I think that could jump up and bite them at some point. They've done a fantastic job on defense, and you got to like the way Saquon Barkley is playing. But I think Philadelphia could be an early casualty of the NFC playoffs.
I think they learned their lesson last year, and remember, Philadelphia, the second half of last year was terrible. They only won one football game. It was against the Giants, and they went on the road and lost to Baker Mayfield. I think maybe they thought they were going to get right when the playoffs came around and maybe took that game a little bit lightly. There's no way that happens again. Philadelphia, the game's going to go through Philly, so they're going to have the crowd there. I think that they blow out whoever they play in their first playoff game. And then we'll see what ends up happening when they got to face some of these other big boys, the Lions in Minnesota and Green Bay and the like, once the playoffs roll around. I agree with you. It is wide open in the NFC. I mean, I'm looking at a Rams ticket at 30-1. 30-1. I mean, they're one of those teams. Again, Green Bay at 15-1. The Vikings right now are 11-1 to win the whole thing. As far as the odds go, though, if I'm being honest with you, we've only got like a minute left. Buffalo at plus 450. That's a pretty good number for the Bills.
That's a great number for Buffalo, especially a team that people are saying is the best team in football right now. I still worry about the Buffalo Bills run defense. That can be problematic because you can run the football on them if you stick to it, and obviously the Kansas City Chiefs are going to stick to it.
And that's a problem because they're probably going to have to play those Chiefs at Arrowhead. And when the playoffs come around, when Josh Allen has to come into Arrowhead, if history is any indication of the future, it just doesn't work out great for him. One fast hour already down this Christmas morning. Two more coming up. That's Corey Parson. I'm the sports machine, Sean Levine, with you right here on the BetQL Network.
Show so far, guys. Glad I kept fun.
This is the Daily Tip on the BetQL Network, presented by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas. Download the app today. Please gamble responsibly.
Good morning. It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. Or, I guess, hey, what do you know? It is Christmas. Welcome back into the Daily Tip right here on the BetQL Network with Corey Parson. I'm the sports machine, Sean Levine, and I'll admit, CP, I live a bit of a bachelor lifestyle, and I live very close to
I would have never guessed.
a lot. Yeah, well, yeah. Believe it or not, but I do. And I'm talking about, like, drinking out of plastic cups, eating with the plasticware, and I eat out like 98% of my meals because luckily I live very close to a lot of different good places to eat at. The only problem is when Christmas rolls around, everything is closed, as you know. And it's like a yearly tradition for me. So I wake up and I look in the fridge and I realize I have absolutely nothing. But this year I have left over from Christmas from a couple of nights ago on my mom's side of the family, the prime rib. So I'm going to heat up prime rib at least 4 different times today. It's 6 a.m. right now where I'm talking to you from. Is it too early for prime rib?
It's probably a little bit too early for prime rib now, but when you live a bachelor lifestyle, you have a strong stomach. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Most people that live bachelor lifestyles can really eat anything at any time. So to the normal people, well, I don't want to say normal, but to most people, probably not. But those of us, because I'm just like you, live a bachelor lifestyle, I got a gigantic turkey leg that I'm going to probably pop on the grill around noon, and that'll be my Christmas.
Oh, damn. Now you're just teasing me. I mean, dude, you want to talk about my stomach? I ate 2 slices of pizza between the second and third time that I got up to pee in the middle of the night last night, which is why I have no food, which is also why my stomach hurts this morning and why I need to heat up the prime rib. So I guess we've gotten to the bottom of this thing. We have not gotten to the bottom, though, of the first ever college football playoff. We are down to 8, though. What are they calling this thing? It can't be the Elite 8. Basketball already took that. They got to figure it out. We've got Penn State on the road. We got really, I would say, matchups that not a lot of people thought that we were going to get. You got Notre Dame against Georgia. To me, is the most interesting of the games. I think that actually, personally, the national champion comes out of that game. But let's talk about the one that everybody's talking about, and that's number 8, Ohio State, right now as the betting favorite, he said, against the number 1 ranked team in the country. As we wake up this morning, Ohio State's a 2-point betting favorite against the number 1 ranked Oregon Ducks. Does that surprise you?
Yeah, this is interesting right here. It doesn't really surprise me. Oregon, now listen, before the season started, I thought that the national championship game would be between the Georgia Bulldogs and the Oregon Ducks. And we still could get that national championship game. As a matter of fact, it's a good shot that we get that national championship game. When Oregon beat Ohio State, though, in Oregon, I'll be honest with you, I was not that impressed with that Oregon victory. And I think people are looking back at that game and thinking, oh, well, how could Ohio State be the favorite? A lot of the stink from the Michigan loss is still on Ohio State. But Oregon has not had as dominant season as a lot of people think they had. Yeah, they spent a great deal of the season as the number 1 team in the country. But I think Oregon can be picked off, despite me saying that I thought Oregon was a team that could win the national championship and definitely be in the game this year. I would lay the number. I would go against what I said early in the season and lay the number with Ohio State. When we move into this new era of college sports, you're going to have programs. And Ohio State is a program, along with Texas and LSU. But when it comes to college sports, Ohio State has the it factor. They got the best skill position players. I don't care what you say about Ryan Day and his loss to Michigan. He's a good head coach. Ohio State is going to go out there looking to avenge this loss, and I think they pull it off. I think the Buckeyes are a good team, but I still think – I don't know if they can get over the hump. So this is going to be one of the more fascinating games, but I would take the Buckeyes in this spot.
I can see you going back and forth in your head, right? I can see the hamster wheel turning back. This is a tough one because we saw the game earlier, and you mentioned Ohio State and his struggles against Michigan, talking about Ryan Day. They need to win a game like this at some point, CP, because let's say Oregon goes out there and beats them again. Then Oregon's beat you twice this year. Then Michigan's beat you 4 times in a row. At that point, the mighty Buckeyes, who consider themselves and their alumni consider themselves to be maybe the premier college football program in the country, the truth is they can't really say they're any better than third now that Oregon's a Big Ten team. This is a big game.
Yeah, Ohio State is more physical this year than they've been in past years, but they have to be able to show it in the big spots. Now, the game that they lost earlier this year, that was a game that Ohio State, I watched that game because I was very intent on watching that game. I did not feel comfortable about Oregon in that game. I think Oregon is a very good team, and I think Ohio State has a slight notch. Now, as far as Ryan Day and the conversation about how his team coaches, what happens to him in the big game. And we've seen him, try to defend himself. And we've seen his media buddies, Kurt Herbstreit and Chris Fowler, also come to his rescue. But the bottom line of the matter is this. You're not beating the good teams, and that's not going to cut it. But then I harken back. Okay, you run Ryan Day. Who you going to go get? Urban Meyer like to come back. You know what I'm saying? He'll lobby for the job. Urban Meyer, you know how he gets down. But you got to come in there and you got to bring somebody in there to coach this, I hate to say franchise, but to coach this program. And can you really get better out there than Ryan Day? I understand we're seeing an influx of NFL decision makers come into big-time college football or college football in general. But Ryan Day is probably still the right guy for the job. Sometimes the pieces just don't hit.
Tons of intrigue for that game. We're talking about an undefeated number 1 team in the country as an underdog in their first college football playoff game that already beat the team that they're playing earlier on in the season. So, I mean, I have no problem with betting this one either way, which is why I'm not betting it at all. I think I'll just touch the number, play the overs, expect a lot of points at 54.5. By the way, that's the highest number as far as the total goes. The Penn State Boise game's 52.5. The Texas Arizona State game also 52.5. The Notre Dame Georgia game, both have really good defenses, 44.5. So 10 points less expected than in this Ohio State versus Oregon game. Let's talk about that Notre Dame number 7 versus Georgia game. 44.5 is the total. Right now, Notre Dame is a slight underdog at plus 1.5. The joke about Notre Dame used to be, why do they call Notre Dame marijuana? Because they always get smoked in bowls. Well, this is a big bowl game. I mean, this is a huge bowl game for Notre Dame, especially because usually when the games get big, they play small. Now you get a chance against a team that a lot of people have their money on to win the national championship. They've won 2 of the last 3 national titles. If they do beat Notre Dame, I think Georgia becomes the clear favorite to win 3 out of 4. Are you surprised that Georgia's not a little bit bigger favorite in this game against Notre Dame?
Actually, this game opened up with Notre Dame as a 1.5-point favorite.
Which is crazy. Against Georgia? That's crazy.
It's the backup quarterback. I've watched a lot of Georgia football this year. This ain't the same Georgia Bulldogs of years past. Now, they've been able to find a way to get it done in the biggest games, obviously, the 8 overtime game versus Georgia Tech, the 2 impressive victories over the Texas Longhorn. But when you put Georgia in these big type moments, they tend to come through. Carson Beck is not a big money player. I'm sorry. I got to admit it. They know how to beat Alabama. They know how to win the SEC championship game. They also know how to lose to Alabama. Going into the second half of that game, before the injury, I was thinking, will they actually pull Carson Beck? Because he wasn't playing good. Now, I think the backup quarterback is a good thing for Georgia, but this Notre Dame team is tough. This Notre Dame team is real tough. Very, very physical football team at the point of attack. Marcus Freeman is a wild card. We've seen him lose this team football games like Northern Illinois, and we've seen him win this team football games like they did with Texas A&M, which was one of the best wins of any college football team this season. This game is likely going to come down to a field goal. We could see a few overtimes in this game right here. I give Georgia the slightest of edges, but if you want to ride with Notre Dame, I can 100% see it. Notre Dame can win this whole thing. That's how good this football team is. And I know that's music to the ears of a lot of Notre Dame fans because they haven't been this dominant or this good in a very long time, probably since I was a lad. and that was a long time ago. But Notre Dame is back, and they're legit. And shout out to Coach Freeman. He's getting the job done.
Come out and fight for old Notre Dame. There's no question about it. This team can win a national championship. In fact, tell me if you disagree. If they didn't have the slip up 3 months ago against Northern Illinois, they'd be undefeated, and they'd probably be the favorite at this point to win the national championship.
Yeah, that one slip up that Notre Dame tends to have every year, they wouldn't have had it against Northern Illinois. And when they lost that game, Sports Machine, they automatically went to the back of people's minds. Then they started reeling off these victories. And you can say, well, they don't play the big-time Southeastern Conference schedule, but they do have a win over Texas A&M. So I think, and then what they was able to do, now I understand it was just Indiana, but they were dominant in that game. And the odds makers opened them up as a favorite. The odds makers watch this sport. They power rank these teams. They didn't make them a favorite for nothing. So I would look out. This could very well be one of the best college football games of the postseason. And I think Notre Dame is live.
Absolutely. And I think the winner, I said it a few minutes ago, of this game ultimately ends up winning the national championship. Texas certainly alive for that. Also, a lot of people have their futures bets in on the Longhorns. They're a 13.5-point favorite against Arizona State. The over-under in that game, 52.5. 13.5 is a lot to lay. I think that a lot of the public money is going to end up laying those points with Texas because everybody knows about Texas. They had the high expectations. They got the high-profile players. And Arizona State just kind of came out of nowhere, CP.
Yeah, it really did come out of nowhere with Arizona State, and they're able to jump up and get a bye and get the first seed, which kind of gives Texas a little bit of a light go into the national semifinals if they can pull it off. And I think Texas will pull it off. They got two running backs that average over 5 yards a pop. They got NFL playmakers on the outsides at wide receivers, and they got a fantastic defense, well-coached football team. The quarterback intrigue is so fascinating to me because you have Quinn Ewers, who, is probably likely going to be a first-round draft pick in the NFL coming up this spring. And then you have Arch Manning, who is a Manning that can run the football and be a dual-threat quarterback, which is the most fascinating thing to me. Now, I've heard reports that Ewers is talking about coming back next year. I'm quite sure people in Texas will tell him, if you play next year, you'll be playing at Florida State because this job is going to Arch Manning. Getting ready for a career with the New York Giants. Now, but with that being said, I would like to see both quarterbacks get some reps in this game. To me, that's what's important, seeing both these quarterbacks, Ewers and Manning, because I really think that they're going to want to put Manning out there on the big stage like this and show what he can do. I guess I'm Joe Public on this one. I would lay the 13.5. I think Texas is significantly a better football team than Arizona State. But I think the intrigue is at the quarterback position.
Can you imagine if Quinn Ewers actually said that he's going to transfer? I mean, he's going to stay in college, but he's going to transfer. How much money would be thrown his way with NIL deals? These teams would be just backing up Brinks truck over each other. They'd be lined up like a bunch of Ubers outside of a concert. It would be the craziest thing you've ever seen, just trying to pay that guy money. So either way, NFL, college, he's in a pretty good spot. So is Arch Manning. So is Texas. We always talk about, is this school back? There was a lot of talk earlier this year. Miami, is the U back? Texas is back. Like they are finally back. And I'm with you. I lay the points in this game. Let's wrap up this college football conversation with the other college football playoff game. That's Penn State laying a big number also, 11.5 against a Boise State team, kind of like Arizona State, got the bye, and nobody thought they were going to be here.
Yeah, much like Notre Dame, Penn State, legacy franchise, been down for years, very overrated, couldn't beat the big schools in Michigan and Ohio State, and still haven't proven they can do so, but they can beat Boise State, and Penn State is also another team. They're live. They're live to win this whole thing.
Penn State has to love this new format better than anybody else, Corey, because they're never good enough like in a 4-team playoff or back in the day when they just gave us 2 teams. But now that there's 12, that's kind of their sweet spot. Penn State's always ranked somewhere between 6 and 12 or something like that. So it feels like also, as you mentioned, sometimes when the games get big, particularly against Michigan and Ohio State and a couple of bowl games in the last few years, Penn State doesn't play as big as you would hope. So laying the points to me in this game is not quite as obvious as it is with Texas. I'm actually looking at the other side where I'm going to I don't think Boise's going to beat them. But 11.5 is a big enough number where, let's say they're down by 15 or 16 and Boise has a late run and scores a late touchdown. That's good enough for me because that's a cover, and maybe that's a win. Let's keep trying to cover on the other side and talk some more football, but get out of college. I mean, dude, it took me 6.5 years, so I think it's finally time for me to get out of college. But let's move on to the NFL. We got a couple of big games today. It's not just basketball anymore on Christmas. There's some football also, and we break down the games on the other side right here on the BetQL Network.
Download the app today. Please gamble responsibly.
Welcome back into the show. With my guy Corey Parson, I'm the sports machine, Sean Levine. Merry Christmas to you and yours. Happy Hanukkah at sunset tonight if you celebrate. We were just talking about during the break the NIL deals getting out of control. So my guy David tells me, my producer, that Oregon has basically already offered Quinn Ewers, hey, $4 million if you come here. The Michigan incoming freshman that everybody wanted that flipped from LSU, he's got like a $10 million NIL deal. This stuff is getting completely out of control. To me, as somebody that stayed in college as long as possible, if I can get $4 million, $10 million, I did it for nothing. I paid a lot of money with no sort of scholarship. Just stay in school. These NIL deals are getting out of hand.
Yeah, I also was on the extended plan when it came to when it came to South Carolina State University. You know what I mean? So my parents were like, "You got to hurry up and get out of there, son. This ain't supposed to be a 6-year deal." Now, with that being said, it was talk about Marvin Harrison Jr. last year, where Ohio State was willing to offer up to $25 million in NIL. And people thought that was very attractive, and why not come back to school for that? You'll make more money than you would as an NFL rookie. But what I think the issue is in a physical sport like football, you want to get to that second NFL contract as soon as possible. And I know NIL is great, but you got C.J. Stroud could be on the doorstep of $500 million by the time we get to his second contract. I don't think the NIL money is ever going to get that good, even though you never know with Ohio State and LSU. So I do think that there is a chance that, a lot of these people's parents, agents are telling them the real bag comes when you get to that second NFL contract, and you don't want to have that kind of wear and tear on your body playing extra seasons of college football. Would you agree with that?
Good advice. That's good long-term advice, but I've never been great with money, and I've always been gimme, gimme, gimme. And so, if somebody said Marvin Harrison Jr., Sports Machine Sean, $25 million to come back and play one more year of college football, okay. And then I'll just go into the NFL with that money in the bank, and it'll be one more year that I have to wait on my contract. That's the whole thing. It's definitely giving a lot of these guys a decision, right? And that was the whole reason. It's, hey, instead of having these guys go to the league early, and this is good, NBA can affect that. There's a player at K-State, it's averaging, I'm talking basketball now, that averages 8 points per game, that got a $2 million deal this offseason. Just a random school is giving a random player $2 million at this point. So the game has definitely changed. Can you imagine how much a guy like Patrick Mahomes would have got who came out of school 7 or 8 years ago? It would have been unbelievable with his marketability. Speaking of Mahomes, he plays today. It feels like every day you look up and there's an NFL game, Mahomes is on the field, and that's because this will be the third time that we've seen the Chiefs now in the last 11 days. Do you think that maybe the wear and tear, football, as you mentioned, is a physical game. You're supposed to play maybe once a week. I wouldn't mind if they gave these teams an extra bye during the season, and now the Chiefs are playing again. We just saw them a few days ago on Saturday night. Chiefs -3 on the road at the Steelers, CP. I'm a Chiefs fan through and through, so I'm laying those points like I always do. That hasn't worked out great for me against the spread because they've played in a lot of close games. Now, they have covered in their last two. A lot on the line for both these teams as far as playoffs go. If the Chiefs win, they can basically rest their players the last week of the regular season, give themselves the double bye because they'll have that one seed wrapped up, and the AFC playoffs will go through Arrowhead. If the Steelers win, can't believe I'm saying this, and they will win the division, which a lot of people had Cincinnati winning at the beginning of the year. A lot of people had Baltimore winning at the beginning of the season. So a lot on the line for both these teams.
Yeah, the Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes machine keeps on rolling, and it looks like they're going to be able to at least compete and have a chance to get that double bye, and that's going to be very important for them to get those players healthy so they can get ready to make another championship run. When you look at basically the amount of times they're playing, this is what happens when you are the Kansas City Chiefs and you have Patrick Mahomes and you have become one of the best franchises in all of professional sports. You're going to get a little bit of outburn and overkill because this is who people want to see. But then you also have to look at how many games they've played. They're not just playing 17 games a season. They're playing 3 or 4 games every year on top of that. So that's even more wear and tear. but they find a way to stay deep. It's a very physical football team. They get it done defensively. I like that the past 2 years they've been winning games with defense. Patrick Mahomes eats high ankle sprains like it's nothing and come out there and throw touchdowns. But now, as far as the game today, though, here's where it gets interesting. Kansas City is very good as a short favorite. That's when you want to lay numbers. Kansas City, you want to lay Kansas City 4. You want to lay Kansas City 3.5. You want to lay Kansas City 3. But then Pittsburgh is also good as a short dog. I can see this game right here being a 2-point game or a push. So I would say Kansas City wins the game by either 3 or 2 points. So if you're laying Kansas City 2.5, you better lay Kansas City 2. If you're laying Kansas City 3, be prepared to have that ticket voided.
My guy likes him a short dog. I used to have a short dog, my little wiener dog, Kirby. I missed it. I'm the sports machine, Sean Levine. As you mentioned, the dog has gotten a little bit shorter. It's gone from 3 last night to 2.5 right now. So Pittsburgh is a 2.5-point home dog. What's up, home dog? At plus 100. You got to lay the 2.5 with the Chiefs at minus 120. The money line, if you want to take Pittsburgh as a dog outright, plus 125. The over-under in this game is sitting at 40. Where is it at? 43.5, I believe. 42.5 the last time. That 44 it's up to right now. So 44 is now the total in that game. If you're looking long shot, Chiefs are plus 450 to win the Super Bowl. The Steelers still way out there for a team that's won a bunch of football games the last couple of years. You can get Pittsburgh right now, BetMGM, at 40-1. I'm looking at a couple of props in today's game. Do either of the quarterback passing yards stand out to you, CP? Patrick Mahomes, 256.5. Russell Wilson goes over if he gets to 227 today.
Yeah, no, this is interesting. I think maybe you might want to take a stab on the Russell Wilson number. I think Pittsburgh, this will be one of the, Pittsburgh obviously known as a team that's going to focus their efforts on running the football. But I do think you can be able to take some shots down the field, and Russell has shown that he's been able to do that well. But it's not really the rushing props that I have my eye on. I'm going to go to that magical one that really comes through a good amount of times for me. Patrick Mahomes rushing yards over 14.5. Now, obviously dealing with this high ankle sprain or this miracle ankle that Patrick Mahomes has, people may think, well, maybe this is not the day that he looks to get out and extend the pocket. But that's not how Patrick Mahomes plays. This is going to be a close football game, and I think that this is going to be one of those games where you see some 3rd and 8 pocket collapse. Patrick Mahomes scramble for a 13-yard first down, stick the football out, move the sticks, and cash your prop. So I would look at Patrick Mahomes over 14.5 rushing yards today.
Dude, I was sick to my stomach last week because everybody was talking about that ankle sprain and Mahomes wasn't going to run the football and the Chiefs were just going to be very conservative and he was just going to – and then who scored the first touchdown of the game on a pretty slick run at that? It was Patrick Mahomes up the middle on a run, and BetMGM had that number, I want to say, at like 45 or 50-1 for Mahomes to be the first touchdown scorer of the game, just figuring that there was no way on earth that he was going to scramble. So I'm with you. He's not a running quarterback per se, the same way that like a Lamar Jackson, nobody's going to confuse him with a Mike Vick or even a Steve Young, but he runs when he needs to, and usually, like you said, that's a close one, but it's a fun one to play, and he often hits that prop. You talk about Pittsburgh being a running football team. The problem with playing the prop on Pittsburgh running backs is they've got a bunch of them. It's not just Najee Harris. He's got the highest number at 42.5. If I was actually going to play a running back over, I would play Isaiah Pacheco at 41.5. It feels like he's finally healthy, and I wouldn't be surprised if he gets the bulk of the touches compared to Kareem Hunt today.
Yeah, it's interesting. I had Kareem Hunt on my bench in a big fantasy matchup last weekend, and I didn't think it was going to get done. He kind of came out of nowhere. I don't want to say out of nowhere, but that was a performance I was not expecting from Kareem Hunt this past week. And now I'm looking at 31.5, and I think I think both players getting involved. Pittsburgh can be very tough versus the run, but you can also rely on Andy Reid to not go away from the run, which sounds crazy to Philadelphia Eagle fans because that was the knock against Andy Reid when he was in Philadelphia, how he got away from the run. But I do agree that this is the time of year where you start to see Pacheco get warmed up. And you start to see Pacheco getting those angry runs. And I think in the second half of this game right here, you'll see Pacheco get over that number. There's going to be multiple running backs. When I think it's winning time, I think you see Pacheco out there. So I would play the over on that 41.5 for Isaiah Pacheco.
All right, Parson, I see your Pacheco, and I raise you a Pickens. What do you think about that, bud? George Pickens is back 65.5. That number to me, I actually think that it should be a little bit bigger. I look at Kelsey's number at 65.5, the same one. If you made me play one of those receivers, air quotes, I know technically Travis Kelsey's a tight end. I'm looking at that George Pickens number at 65.5. I think he gets to at least 70.
Yeah, he is the player that moves the football down the field for the Pittsburgh Steelers. They really don't have nobody else that can make explosive plays. Even though George Pickens is the ultimate NFL crash out, he could get ejected from the game for doing something absolutely bizarre. But that's who George Pickens is. But you got to respect his work on that football field, and he gets it done. I like Pickens as an anytime touchdown scorer. So with that being said, you probably want to hit the first touchdown score market for Pickens as well. He's a fantastic talent. You know, I wish you could place a wager on will he get kicked out of the game, because I probably would put a couple dollars on that as well. You never know what you get, but when he's out there, he is the guy that makes the explosive plays, and Pittsburgh is going to need explosive plays today.
There's probably some market you can find some weird offshore.
Sure
you can probably find it somewhere. Somebody will probably take that bet. I would have loved to have had that back in the day with Antonio Brown. That would have hit a couple of different times. Tonight we've got Ravens and Texans. This is a really good game and a big game for both teams. The Ravens and the Texans, I'll say overall, probably record-wise at least, probably a little bit disappointing compared to where we thought they were going to be. Baltimore last year had the best record in the AFC. The AFC playoffs went through Baltimore. And the Texans, coming off a year where C.J. Stroud was incredible and they won the division, they're going to do it again, but they're not going to win 14 or 15 games.
Most overrated team in the NFL this year was the Houston Texans. You had people saying that this team was going to be playing the Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC Championship game and had a legit shot to win it.
I'm not off that yet. I'm not completely off that yet. Let's see what happens in the first round. I don't think so, but I'm not off it yet.
They're going to lose in the first round of the playoffs. It's not a good football team. They have a good young quarterback
in Houston.
Yeah, but anybody, the Chargers will go in there and beat them. The Broncos will go in there and beat them. If they play Baltimore, matter of fact, today could be a playoff preview. Baltimore will easily go in there and beat them, and so will Pittsburgh as well. I think they're the worst of the AFC playoff teams. They're a horrific against the spread team, even though this right here at 5.5 at home is the number they would cover. They're not going to win this football game. I think Baltimore grabs control of the game early. They keep control. This would be a Baltimore clinic. Houston is not ready for prime time. Houston is not ready to be streamed on Netflix on Christmas Day. This should have been a different football team, not the Houston Texans. And we all love C.J. Stroud. I do too. I think he's a fantastic young man and a great up-and-coming young quarterback. But this football team still has a ways to go.
Hater in the house. So the Texans, the most disappointing team in the NFL. Then what do you say about Baltimore? Because Baltimore's lost a few games that they probably should have won, and they might not even win the division if they lose today.
And listen, it's a good chance the Pittsburgh Steelers do win the division. But if you send Baltimore in the first round playoff game, if you send Baltimore as a 5 seed into Houston, they're coming out of that. Now, here's the problem. The next week, they got to go to Kansas City because they're not a division champion. They'll be a lower seed. And you're going to see another season where Baltimore comes to an end before the AFC Championship game and before the Super Bowl. So now you're going to have more talk about what does Baltimore need to do to get over the hump. I don't think they're doing anything wrong. They just can't beat the Chiefs.
As a Chiefs fan, I hope you're wrong, because that's the way to knock Kansas City out before they get to the Super Bowl is they have to play a path that includes Baltimore with Lamar Jackson and Buffalo with, obviously, Josh Allen. That makes it a whole lot more difficult path than otherwise. If Kansas City can play some combination of the Chargers, Houston, Denver, some of these type of teams, and then get Buffalo, okay, then you get home field, get the bye, get one of those teams, and then it gets real. If you got to play Lamar Jackson and then Josh Allen to get to the Super Bowl, damn, that path, even through Arrowhead, gets a whole lot more difficult. We'll talk plenty more about both these games as the show rolls on. Coming up on the other side, let's get back into the NBA and talk who's naughty and who's nice. I mean, I look at the Milwaukee Bucks. They won that whatever weird in-season tournament thing is. So they think that they're nice. They're still naughty. Who else is? We'll tell you. Coming up on the other side, Corey Parson, Sports Machine Sean Levine on a Christmas morning right here on the BetQL Network.
By BetMGM, the sports book born in Vegas. Download the app today. Please gamble responsibly.
Welcome back into the show. Merry Christmas to you and yours with Corey Parson. I'm the sports machine, Sean Levine, and I can admit, CP, that I'm not the best gift giver. Like last year, I was out on that date with that girl, and I didn't think that we were further enough in the relationship to give each other gifts. It's like the third date, and she busted out an envelope, and it had KU and Baylor tickets in it. And so she had got me a present, obviously, and I panicked, and I gave her the cash in my wallet. I just took it out right there, and I gave her $78. And she looked at me and was like, "Are you serious?" And I didn't know what to do. I basically froze, and the KU Baylor game was awesome, by the way. And at that point, I didn't even take her to the game because we had already stopped talking. So, whatever. It worked out well for me being an idiot. That's not the worst gift I gave them. So it was a few years before that. Different girl, also not with her, believe it or not. She loves squirrels, this girl. I don't know what that tells you, but she really loves squirrels. And so I looked everywhere. I was going to get her a squirrel picture, a squirrel statue. It didn't matter. As long as it was a squirrel, I was going to get it for her. And I went to the mall, and I looked up and down every single store, couldn't find her anything that had a squirrel. So finally, I went to one of those big box stores that has everything. I don't remember if it was a TJ Maxx or Marshall's or whatever. And there's a bin of stuffed animals. And I'm like, that's a squirrel. And I found it, and I grabbed it, and the price was right. And I was telling her I was looking forward to giving her the gift, and it was Christmas, and I gave it to her. And she unwrapped it, and she grabbed the squirrel, and she hugged it like you do with a stuffed animal, and it goes, squeak, squeak. I got my girl a dog toy for Christmas. She was not happy about it. And here's the thing, man. I've always heard it's about the effort. That's just not true, is it?
No, that's old school thinking right there about the effort. Nobody cares about the effort. That's nice to say. It sounds good, but really when people get back to their house, they be like, look at this foolishness. I can't believe somebody got me this. Me and my gift giving history, whether it be ladies or my children or whatever friends, family, I kind of go the alumni route. I'll get you some paraphernalia from your alumni. You got a great gift with those KU and Baylor tickets, big time college basketball. The children have always been fine and taken care of until they hit that 21 threshold. Then you're on your own. The parents, whether it's CDs or gift. I've done pretty well with gift giving. But I can tell you what I can do without is Secret Santa at work. This right here is enough of this foolishness. Because, you fill out your little forms, whatever. And me, I'm a simple guy. Hey, you can bring me a pack of football cards, whatever the case may be. I root for the Dallas Cowboys. I've been cursed with that. And most time people will get me some kind of Dallas Cowboy trinket. But then it's always your gift that I have a problem with when it comes to Secret Santa. And this year I had somebody who had an adult woman who was older than myself wanting coloring books. I don't even know where to buy coloring books at. I'm well past the coloring book stage. As a matter of fact, I don't even know if my daughter ever even owned a pack of crayons. And you mean to tell me I got to go out there a couple days before Christmas to look for a coloring book? And you don't want to go too cheap with the coloring book, you know what I'm saying? You don't want to go to Dollar Tree and buy a 50-cent coloring book. So from now on, leave me out of Secret Santa. You can keep your Dallas Cowboy stuff. I am done with Secret Santa. I don't want no parts of it no more. Am I a Grinch because I'm done with Secret Santa?
You are worse than the Grinch. As far as all of my friends go, you are the biggest curmudgeon of them all. I mean, we're not even 2 hours into the show. You already told us that you cut your kids off from getting them gifts, both birthday and Christmas at a certain age. And now this, I mean, I can't wait what you're going to tell us in the final hour of the show. Speaking of, let's play a game of naughty or nice NBA betting style. So if I actually made this bet at these odds, is it a naughty bet or is it a nice one? Let's start at the Knicks. 11-1 odds right now. I make that bet. Is that naughty or nice?
To do what? To win the NBA championship?
To win the whole thing, baby.
Boy, Yeah, that's a naughty bet right there. Somebody who has been through these battles before with the New York Knicks. I have lived through this to the point where I don't listen. It's good to see the Knicks rebound from 25, 30 years of futility. And obviously, playoff runs that go through Madison Square Garden, they gain a lot of excitement. People have come to love Jalen Brunson and the grit of the role players, the Josh Harts and stuff, a very fan-friendly team. But, for the first time that I can ever remember, there's a lot of people that actually root for the Knicks and admit to rooting for the Knicks. But that Boston Celtic team is a juggernaut. Make no doubts about it. And they're going to be a tough out. And the Knicks have already, shown that they can play very well, but playing up to the level of the Boston Celtics is going to be tough. But the Knicks are hitting threes. We should see a very fascinating Eastern Conference Finals between those two teams. I hate to say it because I won't ever want to see the city of Boston win anything. But I do think that it'd be tough for the Knicks to win a championship this year because it'd be very difficult to get past the Boston Celtics. Any other team in the league, though, the Knicks can eliminate.
The Knicks tip off 4 hours, 10 minutes from now at the Garden, 9.5-point favorites against Wemby and the Spurs. Is it a naughty bet or a nice one if I got Golden State to win the whole thing at 18-1 odds?
You really can never sleep on, Steve Curry Stephen Curry and Steve Kerr, somewhat of an NBA version of Mahomes and Andy Reid. When they get in the dance, they can always get hot. But I'm going to say that that's a naughty bet right there because I don't know if the pieces are around Kerr and Curry to get it done this year. Where this team kind of went wrong was James Wiseman being a bust really set this franchise
I forgot
back.
he existed.
Exactly. Because when you have that kind of high draft pick and it doesn't hit, that was a player they needed. Yeah, they was able to cover it up with guys like Andrew Wiggins, but how far is that going to take you in today's Western Conference? This last week, the Memphis Grizzlies put 144 points on the Golden State Warriors, and they would do it again. So I don't see it happening for the Golden State Warriors this year. They're a playoff team in the West, and Curry still can get this team to a deep run, but they have to make a trade. They have to. If they don't make a big-time deal to bring Curry a youthful superstar, it's not going to happen.
Or just get him an old, aging, hurt superstar in Joel Embiid. Just take a shot at it at this point. Trade away what you got. See if they can take a package that involves like a Andrew Wiggins and a Jonathan Kuminga. Maybe Philly bites on that. You send back Embiid. Because the only shot for Steph Curry or LeBron, some of these aging guys out west to win another championship, is to add to their current rosters. I'm with you. They're both playoff teams, but neither one of them are championship teams. You can get the Lakers to win the whole thing right now at 40-1. And we don't even need to talk about that because that's a naughty bet. You're throwing your money away if you're betting on the Lakers to win the whole thing this year. It sounds like you like the Memphis Grizzlies. Naughty or nice, 25-1 for Ja and the crew to win the whole thing.
Yeah, I would jump on the Memphis Grizzlies. They're playing a good brand of basketball right now that you really are not seeing in the NBA much more. And they're putting up big numbers and they're playing good defense. And they kind of have that old school Golden State Warrior motto of strength in numbers. They can go to the bench and hit you with almost another starting five. And then they're still getting healthy too. Zach Edey's still getting acclimated. They got a superstar in Ja Morant who seems to be headed in the right direction this year. Memphis Grizzlies, Oklahoma City Thunder would be a fantastic Western Conference Finals. This is a Grizzlies team before Morant got into all that stuff a couple years ago. They were the number 2 seed in the Western Conference, right behind the Denver Nuggets the year the Nuggets won the championship. So, yeah, I think the Memphis Grizzlies already have a Western Conference winning ticket on the Memphis Grizzlies at 18-1, and now trying to eye the whole thing. It's going to be interesting to see how they match up with the Celtics, but they're a team who is healthy and deep, and they played a brand of basketball that's not just dribble, shoot a three-pointer.
Memphis and Oklahoma City, that could be the future of the Western Conference for the next few years. We could see that series happen a few times when the playoffs come around. Milwaukee, to me, is on the court, has a championship caliber team. We've been talking about these teams that are well built, where they've got the top end talent with the Giannis and obviously with the Dame Dalla, and then they've got some more Rolta type players like a Bobby Portis and some of the other moves that they made. That team to me is good enough. The only problem is last time I checked, Doc Rivers is still their coach. And this is not the in-season tournament, the weird court tournament, whatever they call that thing, where that tournament basically felt like, who cares about it the most? That's why the Lakers won it last year, because they're kind of corny and they care about that type of stuff at this point. And they went out there and won some tournament that didn't mean a damn thing and pretended like it did. I feel like the Bucks did the same thing. When the real playoffs come around, like the actual playoffs, when you have to play 7-game series, nobody has been worse in game sevens in the history of coaching than Doc Rivers. And this Milwaukee team is good, but not great. What I'm telling you is, CP, they're going to end up in the playoffs. They're also going to end up in a 7-game series. And in that game 7, whether it's the first round, which it'll most likely be, or second round or whatever it is, they're going to lose because they got Doc.
Yeah, the NBA in the Eastern Conference this year is looking like it's shaping up to be, 3 powers of the East, the Celtics, the Knicks, and surprisingly the Cleveland Cavaliers. Then everybody else, Orlando, Milwaukee, all those teams are bunched together. That's why a team like Philadelphia could ascend in the second half of the season and get into that playoff mix right there. But then what happens is those teams get very tough first-round opponents. Now you got to go to Boston. Now you got to go to Cleveland. Now you got to come win, Game 5 in Madison Square Garden, and that joint is jumping like that. Now, one thing about the Bucks, they do have the superstar power in Lillard and Giannis, but Sean, sports machine, they call you the sports machine for a reason, because you hit the nail on the head. You look over the sideline and Doc Rivers is sitting there, and it's a good chance it's going to end with Doc Rivers sitting on the bench trying to figure out how his team lost in this series, and all the fingers are going to be pointed at him. It's the gift that keeps giving.
That was a ridiculous hire when they made it, and it continues to be. You mentioned Philly real quick, the whole buy low, sell high. 50-1 right now to win the whole thing at BetMGM. So if they can get right and win a series or two, who knows? Maybe Philly at 50-1 is it. Now, they're not going to win it, but the odds are pretty good. 2 hours down, one more coming up. Let's talk some more football right here on the BetQL Network.
The Daily Tip.
Merry Christmas. Here's to hoping that Santa Claus brought you everything that you were hoping. Now we've got New Year's right around the corner. It is Hanukkah at sundown tonight. There's sports all over the place. I mean, we got NBA action. We got NFL action. We got college football. It's bowl season right now. The big one's coming up. Penn State versus Boise State, Texas and ASU, Ohio State and Oregon, and, of course, Notre Dame and Georgia in your college football playoff. But CP, that doesn't mean there's not a bunch of other bowl games, which means we get a lot of action and a lot of bets here over the next few weeks. Some of those that I have my eye on include Alabama laying 12.5 points against Michigan. Michigan feels like they're in this weird spot right now where they've got a really good recruiting class. Last I saw, it was a top 3 recruiting class in the entire country going forward, and they're coming off of a national championship, but also they've got a first-year head coach. They're not in the first college football playoff. Then on the flip side, they did just beat Ohio State. I'm not sure what to think of Michigan overall and where they are right now, but you could say the same thing about Alabama, where they're kind of in this new world. Alabama minus 12.5 against Michigan. Where's your bet going?
Yeah, 12.5 is a big number, but I would lay the number right here with the Crimson Tide. I think overall they are a better football team. And listen, when it comes to these bowl games that are not in the college football playoff or not national championship worthy, sometimes the motivation for these games could be low. But you also got 2 premier programs that got players that want to put good tape out for NFL scouts. And I think nobody wants to do that more than Alabama quarterback Jalen Milroe. You know you got 2 first-round talent defensive linemen for the Michigan Wolverines. So this is going to be a big test to see how Milroe can handle that pressure, how he breaks down and handles broken plays, and how he hits his wide receivers. And, you know, this is one of the years where they do have the young kid, Alabama. His name escapes my mind right now, the young wide receiver that had that big game. But what you also see with Bama is the top-end outside talent was not there this year. Lost some in the transfer portal. So they'll continue to get stronger, and they'll continue to be a threat to be in Atlanta the first Saturday in December for the SEC championship game. But this is about Jalen Milroe and him getting his draft stock together. So I like the Crimson Tide by 2 touchdowns.
Milroe right now is a projected top 5, top 10 pick, obviously the Alabama quarterback. You go out there and have a 300-yard, 4-touchdown game against Michigan with everybody watching. Maybe that projects you as high as the number 1 overall pick. Right now, that's projected to be Colorado quarterback and son of Deion Sanders, Shedeur Sanders. And I'd have no problem if I am the Giants or the Jets or whoever ends up with that number 1 overall pick. Jacksonville, teams like that, it's a little bit different because they've already got their quarterback going forward under contract, so they'd have to think about maybe trading out of that position. But what I'm trying to tell you is if I'm a team that needs a quarterback, and there's a lot of the Raiders in the NFL that might end up with that number 1 overall pick, I have no problem taking Shedeur Sanders number 1 overall. In fact, now that I've seen almost 1 full year of Caleb Williams in the NFL, and it's easy for me to say from where I sit in this seat in a heated room with 1 year of tape on Caleb Williams in the NFL, I think Shedeur is going to be better.
Yeah, I know Shedeur Sanders is a high-level prospect at the quarterback position, and I agree. He should be the number 1 draft pick. We've already heard Deion come out and say he wouldn't mind Shedeur playing for the Giants. Shedeur has been kind of public and openly rooting to get to the Raiders with his guy Tom Brady. It's going to be a fascinating offseason. To handicap the game right quick, though, I would lay the number with Colorado. Coming into this season, you know, it was a lot of hate going towards that Colorado Buffalo program after all the love they received last year. And shout out to Deion Sanders. He went into a tougher conference, and he had that team on the brink of a Big 12 championship. Now he's going to have to do it without his kids, and he's already gotten that transfer portal and got his quarterback for next year. So he takes coaching college football seriously. So shout out to Coach Prime. Now, as far as Shedeur goes and his things moving forward, I'm very curious. I would not be surprised if the Giants made a mistake with this pick, because I can guarantee you the Mara family got their eyes on Arch Manning. And Arch Manning should be drafted 3 years after high school. Arch Manning should be draft eligible next year this time. Now, it's no guarantee that the Giants are going to be terrible again, but they've been terrible for the past decade. So why wouldn't they be? They got head coaching issues, but so do the Las Vegas Raiders. Would you get Shedeur Sanders and then hand him over to Antonio Pierce in a division with Andy Reid, a Harbaugh, and Sean Payton? That's going to be very tough to do. So I don't believe that Antonio Pierce is going to be the Raiders head coach next season. And if I'm Shedeur Sanders, I know you don't want to get involved in that, but I don't think Pierce is the guy. So if they're going to bring Shedeur in there, they need to be going, I don't want to say Lincoln Riley, but they need to be looking at an innovative offensive mind, a Cliff Kingsbury type coach, so their quarterback can have an easy landing spot.
I do think there's a pretty good chance that Lincoln Riley is looking for a job this offseason. BYU gets 4 in this bowl game against Colorado. Back to Deion. Not only was that kind of an outside-the-box hire by Colorado to get a guy that was an NFL player that kind of just was dabbling into coaching. It felt like he was maybe doing it because he had his actual kids on the team. And now looking back at it a couple of years later, I would argue that it's one of, if not the best college football coaching hire that we've seen in the last 25 or 30 years. Yeah. When Ohio State went out there and hired Urban Meyer, that's a good hire, but it's also really obvious, right? When LSU gets Brian Kelly, that's not exactly outside the box. Colorado was dormant. They were nobody. For 20 years, they were nothing. Since they had Michael Westbrook and Cordell Stewart and Rashaan Salam, right? That used to be a proud football institution that just became invisible. And then Deion got there, and as you said, it was kind of weird, the public opinion, the sentiment. At first, people were rooting for him. Then they started winning games, and people started rooting against him. I love that team, man. I think culturally, CP, they're the coolest college football team since the U. Am I wrong?
No, you're 100%. You hit it. You know what I'm saying? And you see them kind of lean into that. I know my son is a big fan. You know what I'm saying? Kind of like, you harken back to the Fab Five and the UNLV running Rebels and college basketball of that era. You mentioned the U in Miami and what they would be able to do. Like, yep, culturally, they are a cultural phenom. Now, what I will say is this, though. People need to stay out of Travis Hunter business. Like, that's a young man. You know what I'm saying? Them kids was teenagers a couple years ago, and these people make mistakes. In this social media area, it can be very tough for young people to live their lives and have relationships. So I don't want them out there embarrassing a young man. Fantastic football player. I was watching the Charles Woodson and Peyton Manning documentary last night about their race for the Heisman, and I thought about Travis Hunter and, what he was able to do as a two-way player, mainly a defensive player who's probably going to be a top 5 pick in the NFL draft. So I'm a big fan of what Deion. And you see, what was so smart about it is having his children and having Shedeur, now the program has credibility. So, yeah, Shedeur may not be here no more, and Travis Hunter may not be there no more, but those two players set the foundation. So now when they go into the transfer portal, it's cool to play for Colorado. Beautiful campus, beautiful stadium. You got concerts in the locker room with the hottest MCs. Young men in their 20s who wouldn't want to play for Coach Prime.
NFL players all over the sideline. Deion looking cool with those reflective shades and that flat bill and that white hoodie. What are we talking about here? It's as cool as it gets. Not to mention they win a bunch of games. Yep. They fill out that stadium at Folsom Field. It's a great game day atmosphere, and it looks like you said top 5 pick. I'd be surprised if those guys don't go number 1 and number 2. When's the last time, if ever, the same school had, like we were just talking about the U, or go back to Alabama or Notre Dame? When's the last time a school had the number 1 and number 2 pick in the NFL draft? We're talking about a quarterback and a two-way player and a Heisman Trophy winner and a big-time bowl game. That's why I'm laying those points with Colorado against BYU. Back to the betting side of things, because after all, BetQL Network. I mean, Colorado understands that they have to win and look cool and win big. And I think if there's an opportunity, they blow the doors off of BYU. So, again, everybody's got all their eyes on this game. As far as non-playoff bowl games go going forward, I think this is the one, BYU and Colorado. One that I can't figure out, maybe you can help me with, CP. My Big 12's Iowa State plus 3.5. It looked like for a while they were the best team in the conference. Ultimately, Arizona State. I didn't know they were in the conference. Arizona State ended up winning the damn thing. Iowa State plus 3.5 at Miami. Which way you betting that one?
Yeah, this is a real interesting matchup right here. And I would take the 3.5 with Iowa State, to be honest with you. I like the fact that they're good in the hook. I think it's going to be a close bowl game. I mean, Miami has had a style of play the whole season. Miami is going to let you hang around and try to win the game with explosive plays in the fourth quarter. That's not going to work against a team like Iowa State that's going to be disciplined, that's going to be physical, play tough defense, and not really make mistakes by turning the ball over and things of that sort. Cam Ward, fantastic season. Another guy in a great quarterback class is going to be able to put up big numbers. Is the U back? Well, let's see what they do at quarterback in the transfer portal next year before we say the U is back. Because in order to be back, you got to win an ACC where there's only one good team, right? And that's Dabo's bunch. And is Dabo bunch really that good? Everybody they played with a number next to their name beat them for the most part. So I'm not going to go as far as say the U is back yet. I would take the 3.5 and sprinkle the money line with Iowa State. Obviously, the U is a very popular team. They're a public route. I would not lay across the hook with this Miami team.
I don't know the name of this bowl, but it should be the Meteorologist Bowl. It's the Hurricanes versus the Cyclones. Are you kidding me? I mean, get the weather report up there. It'd be great. How about Texas A&M? You've talked about them in their game versus Notre Dame a couple of times during the course of this show. They're laying 3.5 against USC. I don't know if USC wins this game, has motivation, and this might be the last time we see Lincoln Riley on that sideline.
Yeah, this is an interesting one too, and I'd probably take the Trojans with the hook. What's going to be fascinating about this game, right, is this game is in Las Vegas. So you would think that USC would have the home field advantage. But let me tell you something. Them Aggies are going to be in Vegas. They're going to be deep, and they're going to be well saturated. You know what I'm saying? So expect a big one from the Aggie fan to come out and really take over in what should be University of Southern California territory. But just think about these two fan bases, these two alumni bases could not be any different. You got the hoity-toities from USC, University of Southern California, and then you got the good old boys coming down there, the hillbillies coming out to Las Vegas to party and dance for a weekend. It's going to be a good time in the crowd. As far as the football field, I'll take the hook with the USC Trojans. And like you said, Lincoln Riley he's going to get phone calls this year from NFL owners.
Have you been to a game in Las Vegas? Because you talk about well saturated. It's also, what's the way to put this? Well smoked. There's some stuff going on in the air. And that's the NFL game. That's the NFL game that I went to. College atmosphere, same stadium as you mentioned. The USC fans and those Cowboys coming up from A&M. Dude, I wish I was there.
I know it's going to be lit. Hey, listen, you're right. It's going to be more than well saturated, and it's probably going to be more than well smoked too, with USC involved.
Yeah, you're probably right about that one. Another Texas school in a big bowl game, Baylor laying 1 against LSU. Where are you betting that one?
Interesting. I was very high on LSU coming into this season. And LSU, they had some good moments and they had some bad moments. I really don't know what to make of this LSU team. I thought that Brian Kelly, now LSU, like Ohio State, is one of those powerhouses. They're going to be an NIL dynasty. Ohio State, LSU, and now when North Carolina moves to the SEC, you can put North Carolina in that mix as well, and Texas too.
USC should be. Texas for sure. USC should be.
Yes, yeah, you're 100% correct. Yeah, you're right. USC should be as well. But I just don't know. It's not clicking with this LSU team and Brian Kelly yet. I think this is a good test for them. I probably would go the opposite direction. I would go with Baylor.
Yeah, I like Baylor out of the Big 12 also. Let's slip one more in here before a break, and then we'll get back into the NFL on the other side. Duke versus Ole Miss. Everybody loved Ole Miss all season long. They burned me, man. I mean, they burned my chaps a couple of different times. I laid points with them. I'm not doing it again. I'm going to take the 14.5 with Duke.
Yeah, LSU has Ole Miss and Penn State were kind of always like that. Next, can they get over the hump and step up and compete with the big boys in their conference? Penn State's in the college football playoff. And, Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin is on the sideline saying we should have been there. It's the old battle between the SEC and the Big Ten when it comes to who gets the primetime spots in these bowl games. Lane Kiffin, he's a very interesting guy. He really is. It's probably a no bet for me, but if anything, I roll on the side of Ole Miss.
You say Lane Kiffin's interesting. I say he's overrated. Coming up next, we're going to play a Christmas edition of Overrated or Underrated right here on the BetQL Network.
is the Daily Tip on the BetQL network, presented by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas. Download the app today. Please gamble responsibly.
It's Christmas morning, and we've got action, all sorts of action today. NBA, NFL, we got a little bit of college football, college basketball tomorrow. It's the happiest time of the year, and it's also a really good time if you like to bet. You're at the right place. It is the Daily Tip right here on the BetQL network with Corey Parson. I'm the sports machine, Sean Levine. All right, man. Before we get into this game of overrated, underrated, I had the most overrated Christmas thing in the world last night. You ever had eggnog?
I'm an eggnog guy.
You're an eggnog guy. Then you're first.
I'm an eggnog supporter.
What's the matter with you, dude? Seriously, it's flavored snot that's probably not even that good. The stuff was disgusting, and the whole family's sitting around drinking it like it's some sort of flavored green tea. It was terrible.
No, if you get the right mix of cinnamon, get a little paprika in there, eggnog can be a very nice. Listen, I spike my eggnog though, so I'll have eggnog, and then I'll put a little something extra in there too, right? Just to give it that little extra kick to help me sleep good at night. So I know I'm an eggnog supporter. Now, here's the thing. I hate to be hypocritical because you won't see eggnog past January 1st. But from like the day before Thanksgiving to January 1st, I'm an eggnog guy. After that, never again would I even think about picking up eggnog.
Nothing else in our life works that way, though. Why is it like that, where we can accept that drink for like a 2-week period, and then it's out of our life again until next year? That tells you
never see somebody show up you never see somebody show up at the beach on 4th of July with a bottle of eggnog.
That's what I'm saying. I've never seen that happen. If it did, I might actually give it a shot. You talk about spike. You'd have to really spike that stuff for me to like it. All right, I think it's overrated. Lots of stuff going on this Christmas. Let's play a game of overrated, underrated. We got Victor Wembanyama against the New York Knicks. Remember, this is kind of based on what we thought he was going to be. Now that we're here in year 2 for Wemby, he's averaging damn near 25 and 10. He's got his team over 500. Compared to your expectations, Wembanyama, overrated or underrated?
Overrated. I was much like how you mentioned earlier in the program, where I was a guy who thought this was going to be like a Sean Bradley or some other, just tall dunking dummy that stand back there and get dunked on and be awkward. And now I'm looking at this guy like, whoa, wait a minute. They make 7'7" dudes like this now that could put the ball between his legs, step back and hit a 3. He can put you in the post and get busy. Not to mention he can play one-on-one basketball as well. He's great around the rim as a defender. This guy has multiple MVPs in his future. I was wrong about Victor Wembanyama. I believe he was underrated. Now, when I look at it, and I'm like, wow, Wemby, he's the real deal. I am willing to admit when I'm wrong on a player, right? I told people in fantasies this year, stay away from Saquon Barkley. He's going to run for 2,000 yards. Yep. Don't hold it against me. You know what I'm saying? But with that being said, I was wrong on Wembanyama. I'm willing to admit so. He's an MVP candidate now and moving forward.
How long until they are in the championship conversation? It's not this year. It's probably not next year. By year 4, are we talking about the Spurs getting back to the Tim Duncan days?
Well, what are they going to do with head coach? You know what I'm saying? As Pop, we know he's had some health issues this year, and he's starting to be, an older gentleman. How long is Pop going to continue to be out there? Listen, I believe that the San Antonio Spurs are one of those organizations, sort of like the Baltimore Ravens, where they know how to build it. It's going to be important that the next head coach comes into that reign and knows how to build it. And if so, they're about 2 or 3 years away. The Western Conference should be very interesting with Oklahoma City, Memphis, and now you can start to look at a San Antonio Spurs team that's coming along.
Godspeed for Pops to get better with that stroke that he had. I knew that he was getting up there in age. I had to look it up. Dude, he's 75 years old. My goodness. Yeah, no, and still on the sidelines, well, at least in theory. So, yeah, you're right. They're going to have to figure that out going forward. David Robinson had Pop the whole time. Tim Duncan had Pop the whole time. Wembanyama, for basically the prime of his career, is not going to have him as his head coach. That's going to be a huge hire. You know what I bet they go after, and this is not for nothing, I bet they go after Bill Self. He's got the connections with, and with maybe he takes the NIL and says screw it the same way that I think that's part of the reason Mike Krzyzewski got out of there. I think that's why Nick Saban got out of there. I think that's why some of these guys that have been coaching at the college level for a long time either retire or say I'm going to try it at another level. So maybe that's the direction.
Don't forget Roy Williams at North Carolina, and don't forget Jay Wright at Villanova as well. So we're seeing the legendary college coaches say, hey, we don't want to deal with paying players. And now we're seeing the NFL guys say, hey, we know how to play people and get it done right. So it's going to be interesting. What about a guy like Tim Duncan? Maybe he is the heir apparent to Greg Popovich in San Antonio.
He's got some sweet hair. He just looks so chill in his post-retirement.
Really does.
I would love to see. And remember, didn't Tim Duncan coach a game or two? Something weird happened where they did have him on the sidelines before. Obviously, that would be very popular with the fans. All right, we're playing the Christmas edition of Overrated, Underrated here on the BetQL network. I know you've seen this movie, Corey. Jingle All the Way. Overrated, underrated.
Solid Christmas movie. Maybe a little underrated. I'm not really the big Christmas movie guy, but I can sit through the whole thing. So I would say Jingle All the Way is underrated.
Turbo Man, way underrated. I'm not saying it's a top 3 or it's not Home Alone or anything like that. It's not Christmas Vacation, but it's kind of on that next tier. I like Jingle All the Way. Don't love it, but I like Jingle All the Way. Russell Wilson plays against the Texans later on today. Russell Wilson's had a weird career where he was first ballot Hall of Famer, Super Bowl champion, got there a couple of times. Then all of a sudden he gets to Denver and everybody pretend like he absolutely sucks, and people are talking about starting Justin Fields over him. Now, I think the story's kind of yet to be written. Right? What happens if Russell Wilson gets to another Super Bowl, dare I say wins another championship? What if he plays another 4 or 5 years at this level? Current day Russell Wilson, overrated, underrated?
If you put Russell Wilson in the Pro Football Hall of Fame and Steve McNair is not in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, I'm going to have a problem with that. And I know McNair was not a champion. He was 1 yard away from being a Super Bowl champion. And obviously McNair would have to be done posthumously. So that's an interesting.
Let me tell you real quick. You're going to be pretty upset then, because I guarantee you that Russell, he might not be a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's going to the Hall of Fame, and he's likely to be first ballot. You don't think Russell Wilson's a Hall of Famer?
Okay. So the NFL is so when the quarterback wins a championship, he can walk into the Hall of Fame. But can you sit up there and tell me that Eli Manning had better career than Tony Romo or Donovan McNabb just because he went on 2 miracle runs? Eli Manning had a season where he threw 20-something interceptions. This guy had 2 good seasons, and he's going to walk into the Hall of Fame because he had 2 good playoff runs? And it's the same with Russell.
Eli's a different story before you get to Russell Wilson, because first of all, he's got the Manning last name, which helps. Second of all, he didn't just win 1 Super Bowl, he won 2. And who did he beat along the way? Both times. Tom Brady, the greatest of all time. So he's got a lot of different feathers in his cap where I don't mind the Brady thing. The guys that I have a problem with at quarterback, we even had the conversation, makes me a little sick to my stomach, is like Phillip Rivers. Who cares if he's top 10, top 15 all the time in touchdown passes and yards and attempts? That just means he played for a long-ass time. So I don't want to put guys in for longevity. But if you win multiple Super Bowls and your last name's Manning, sorry, dude. Like it or love it, he's getting in.
And listen, Wilson was on teams that should have beaten Peyton Manning and Tom Brady in Super Bowls. But it really was the defense of the Seattle Seahawks. And don't get me wrong, and I get it, Russell Wilson's a Super Bowl guy. A Hall of Fame guy. He's had some ups and downs in his careers, but I think we remember the good and the championship more so than the bad. Now, with that being said, when they went from Fields to Russell Wilson, they were playing the Jets. Everybody bet the Jets that week because they thought Russell Wilson was washed up. And that's what made Mike Tomlin great. He knew that Fields was not the answer and that Wilson can get him to a possible division championship. Another reason why he's another Hall of Famer on the sideline.
His numbers in Denver last year, by the way, only because I have it pulled up, not as bad as people make it out to be. He had 26 touchdowns to 8 interceptions. They benched him at the end of the year. He still had 3,000 passing yards. This year he's got 15 touchdowns to 4 picks, so he's protecting the ball. His best years, you go back to 2020, 40 touchdowns to 13 interceptions. His Super Bowl winning season, 34 touchdowns to 8 picks. He's gotten to a couple of Super Bowls. He's got 349 touchdowns to 100 interceptions and a partridge in a pear tree. To me, all those numbers and longevity, that's going to get you in.
Has he had a better career than Ben Roethlisberger?
Very similar with everything, I would say, with the longevity, with the numbers, with the Super Bowl appearances. That's a close one. I would take Roethlisberger, but barely.
Well, and Roethlisberger is a Pittsburgh Steeler, and that in the NFL that means something. When you get out there and you see those terrible towels take over your stadium, that's a humongous fan base. So Roethlisberger gets in, but Wilson deserves to be in as well.
While we're playing a game of over-under Christmas style, we got Kevin Durant coming up later on tonight, the nightcap in the NBA versus the Denver Nuggets. Denver's actually a road favorite in this game later on tonight in Phoenix, a 1.5-point favorite. Kevin Durant, where he is at this point in his career. His prop today, CP, is 31.5 points. Overrated, underrated, current day Kevin Durant.
Yeah, I hate to say this is pride of Prince George's County, a guy I've been watching play basketball since he was in high school. But I think we're at the overrated stage of Kevin Durant's career. And I probably would lay that number tonight with the Denver Nuggets going into Phoenix. No Booker for Phoenix tonight, who is really, probably the premier player on that team. Kevin Durant's going to miss about 15 to 20 games, maybe even 25 this season. And then when you get into the postseason and you want Durant to ramp up, he needs a little bit more help around him now. His best years were his years in Golden State, where he basically played a second fiddle to Steph Curry. It's difficult to do it. He almost did it with the Brooklyn Nets. He was, a shoe size away from possibly winning a championship in Brooklyn, really by himself. But now we're starting to see the injuries pile up, and we're starting to see the missed games. And Kevin Durant is, he's not LeBron James old, but he's getting there. You know what I'm saying? So I think Durant's a little bit overrated right now. Durant's a good number 2 at this point in his career.
I don't think a lot of people are going to like this, but I'm just going to be honest. I think his career has been a little bit overrated. I think that he is a great scorer, a great offensive player, and I agree with what you said, that his best years were in Golden State. But also I would look back and say, and I said this at the time, I think Golden State would have won a championship with or without Kevin Durant. We were talking about a team that had already won a title. We were talking about a team that was winning 60-plus games on the regular with all the talent in the world. And if your argument is, but he was the MVP of the finals, well, if he wasn't there, Steph would have gotten more shots and probably ended up being the MVP of the finals anyway. So, in my opinion, Kevin Durant, what I hold against him is I don't consider him to be an NBA champion. I think that he ran scared. I think that what happened is he saw the writing on the wall, and I don't really blame him. He was in the smallest market in Oklahoma City. He stayed for a couple of contracts. Remember, he went from Seattle, drafted him, played 1 year there, ended up in Oklahoma City. He wanted to play in a bigger place with a better team. I don't blame him. He got them all the way to the finals. He got them to the Western Conference Finals a couple of different times. But if I look back at his career, what happened before he played with Steph Curry? He couldn't win a championship. What's happened since he played with Steph Curry? He couldn't win a championship. Unless he wins one in the next few years before he hangs it up, I personally, and I'm a jerk, am going to consider Kevin Durant's career a little bit hollow and without a title because of where he got it. If he would have ran to any other place except for a ready-made Golden State Warriors, I wouldn't hold him against him. So Kevin Durant's great, but we're talking about a lot of people consider him to be a top 7, 8 all-time NBA player. I'll put him in the top 20.
Yeah, I probably would agree with those sentiments in the top 20. Now, what I will say is those Oklahoma City Thunder team, they gave the best run to the Golden State Warriors in that era. Like, you had the Rockets and obviously you had the Cavaliers, but the Thunder was the team that actually really had them on the ropes. And Klay Thompson had to save them in that series.
That team was so cool also, just because they were all young coming up together.
Yep.
I mean, you want to talk about a guy that does his job well, Sam Presti. Goodness gracious. Think about what he's done now with Oklahoma City, and has them as the best team in the Western Conference, all homegrown talent. You don't exactly get a bunch of free agents that go there. And then at one time, 3 years in a row, you draft Westbrook and Harden and Kevin Durant. Incredible.
and then in the smallest market, in a big market sport, tear it down, and then build it back again in no time. Unbelievable. He's the best. He's the best executive in professional sports.
I'm with you. Not just the NBA, but like you said, in professional sports, to do it in that city and to do it multiple times. If you think about it, he's actually done it 3 separate times. That in between, not quite as successful, but like even a couple of years ago, they were a playoff team when they were supposed to suck. Yeah, that guy is unbelievable. If you've never been to a game in Oklahoma City, I don't blame you because you're kind of far away, but I'm not, damn it. I live in Kansas City. That's a great atmosphere, my guy. All right, let's talk NFL the rest of the way. We'll put a bow on this Christmas edition. See what I did there? A bow, because it's Christmas, of the Daily Tip right here on the BetQL Network.
Corey, you're on, correct?
This is the Daily Tip on the BetQL Network, presented by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas. Download the app today. Please gamble responsibly.
Final segment for us this Christmas morning right here on the BetQL Network. That's Corey Parson. I am the sports machine, Sean Levine. We are about 3 hours and 15 minutes away from early action. That starts on the NBA court in New York. The San Antonio Spurs, a 9.5-point underdog against the Knicks. After that, it's the Timberwolves, 5.5-point dogs on the road in Dallas. Philadelphia, man, they've been awful this year. The 76ers getting 8.5 in Boston. And then tonight, it is the Los Angeles Lakers on the road at Golden State. Golden State, a 3.5-point favorite. And the only home dog, what's up, home dog, is the Phoenix Suns. That's tonight. They're a 1.5-point underdog against the Denver Nuggets. Let's get off the NBA court and spend the rest of the show on the NFL field, Corey, because we've got NFL games today. They have stuck their way onto the Christmas schedule. That's supposed to be the NBA, and you look up, and, well, here we are talking football. The Kansas City Chiefs, once again, on the national stage, laying 3 points on the road against the Steelers. Chiefs win, they wrap up the 1 seed. Steelers win, they wrap up the division. Where's your money going?
It's a tough one right here. I look at it in two different ways. I would lay 2 with the Kansas City Chiefs. I would take 3 with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Best bet in this game for me would be the Kansas City Chiefs on the money line. I think Patrick Mahomes and crew go out there and get it done. And I love Mahomes over 14.5 rushing yards.
That game keeps going back and forth. Started at 3, went down to 2. Now it's sitting at 2.5 at BetMGM. Again, the over-under in that game sitting right at 44. If you're a prop player, you can get Patrick Mahomes passing total at 256.5. Russell Wilson at 226.5. What do you think about Travis Kelce on the holidays? You know what I mean? He's a festive type guy. He's everywhere. 65.5 yards. He hasn't done that as much as he has in the past. Maybe today's the day.
Nah, if I would do anything with Travis Kelce, it'd be the under. I would go under on Travis Kelce yards. I would go under on Travis Kelce receptions. But I think we're starting to see, Travis Kelce role in that offense start to minimize. Now in the postseason, he could be the same old Travis Kelce. He's still going to be their GTG, their go-to guy when you get in those third down situations. But we haven't seen the best statistically from Kelce this year.
Not for nothing. I think he retires if the Chiefs win the Super Bowl. I think he looks at, his life right now. He's getting old. He's banged up. It would be a three-peat. You could be the only NFL team to ever do that. Right off into the sunset with your famous girlfriend. Go out with some kids. You see how much money his brother's making off of the football field, and he's the more better-looking, famous, better football player of the two brothers. So, I wouldn't be surprised if he says, all right, I'm done. The only thing that doesn't make me quite believe that is he likes a good show. He's kind of a me-type guy, where I wouldn't be surprised if he wants to have the retirement tour, the Mariano Rivera thing, where he goes around and everybody pats him on the back. So the over-under Travis Kelce, you tell me, I'll put it one more season. What do you think?
I would take, I would probably take the under on that. I agree with you as well. I could see this being the last season for Travis Kelce. But you also make a good point. Travis Kelce don't turn down no spotlight.
No, Travis Kelce loves him some Travis Kelce. I'll give you that. Ravens and Texans later on today. Ravens on the road laying 5.5 points. It sounds like you just don't believe in the Texans.
No, I don't believe in the Texans. But if there was any spot that I would take the Texans, it would be as a home underdog. But I just believe that the Baltimore Ravens are a better football team. I think we saw this last year when the two teams met in the postseason. And possibly if Pittsburgh could win today, we probably would see Baltimore and Houston play again in Houston in a couple of weeks from now on Wild Card Weekend. With that being said, this is overmatched. Houston is an ascending AFC team. Baltimore is one of the OGs of the AFC.
So I agree with you, but, and I like big butts and I cannot lie, dude, if the Texans win this game, the Texans and the Ravens have the same record. So we can make all these arguments, which team's better, what happens in the rematch, and this quarterback's better. The truth is they both have the exact same record if the Texans can pull off the win today. They're both going to end up in the playoffs. Let's go over the Sunday matchups while we have a few minutes left this morning here on the BetQL network. Actually, so we've got a game tomorrow, and then we've got games on Sunday. Tomorrow on Amazon. So hopefully you've got a good TV package where you've got Netflix and Amazon and Disney and HBO and Cinemax. At this point, bro, you need it all. Seahawks on the road in Chicago. Chicago's only a 3.5-point underdog. I just, at this point, believe that the Bears don't believe in themselves. And I think the Seahawks, who are technically still playing for something, kind of, I think that Seattle goes in there and blows out Chicago.
Motivation is going to be an interesting factor in some of these teams that have outside shots and no shot at making the playoffs coming down the stretch. I've not been good handicapping the NFC West this year, full disclosure. I would lay the number with Seattle, but I think it would come down to I don't think it'd be a slam dunk like you do. I think the Bears not that I think the Bears show fight. I just don't know how much fight Seattle's going to show.
For the record, nobody was good at handicapping the NFC West this year, my guy. I mean, San Francisco just completely screwed the pooch there, where I don't even know what to make of that division. You could tell me that the Rams end up staying hot and win a playoff game or two and end up in an NFC Championship game. Chargers, they have a lot to play for, still playing for a playoff spot and seeding. They're only a 4-point favorite on the road against the Patriots. The Patriots are a bad football team that actually covers more than you would think. They're not terrible against the spread.
Yeah, they're not. But the Chargers, one of the things that we've seen the Chargers this year, the Chargers are good as favorites, and the Chargers are good on the road. And that's because they're coached by a Harbaugh, another fantastic hire. Everybody running out there to hire guys like Ben Johnson. These guys call plays. You need to hire a football coach, a guy like Harbaugh, a guy like Vrabel. With that being said, I'm going to continue. I've been riding the Chargers all season. One of the reasons why I'm up a few units on the year. So I would lay the number with the Chargers. I'm not going to go away from them now. The number looks tricky because it's closer than you think it is. But at this point, I think you got to go with your cap, and I'll lay it with the Chargers. I'll take that to the window.
Corey, you mentioned teams that are still technically in it, what their motivation is going to be. The team that comes to mind when you say that is the Cincinnati Bengals. In theory, if they keep winning, they could get in, but it's got a lot of stuff has to happen, right? They got to get some luck and smoke and mirrors, and they're a 3-point home favorite against the Denver Broncos. The Broncos are a team that nobody thought was going to be in the playoffs. One more win and they lock up a spot. Does that win come against the Cincinnati Bengals as a 3-point dog?
Yeah, I would take the money line on the Denver Broncos in this one right here. I just think it's two contrasting styles. You got the Denver Broncos and Sean Payton. They go out there and they play football. And then you got the Cincinnati Bengals and Zach Taylor, who's essentially a 7-on-7 team. And then also you want to bet Cincinnati when they're on the road, not so much when they're at home. They're not been covering numbers at home this year, if I'm not mistaken on that. So I would go ahead. I would take the 3, but I would really keep them points. Give me Denver to win the game outright.
He doesn't need your damn points. Cardinals have been eliminated on the road plus 6.5 against the Rams. The Rams look like they're going to end up winning the division. Do they win by more than 6.5 points against the Cardinals?
Another weird NFC West matchup that I do not know how to handicap. Yeah, I do not know how to handicap. You don't know which Ram team is going to show up. You don't know which Cardinal team is going to show up. I would take the 6.5 with Arizona, but I would be very, very skeptical about that. I wouldn't go to the window on that one. I'm on a show talking about betting, so I'm going to answer the question. But I will not physically at any point walk up to a betting window and say, hey, give me 6.5 on the Cardinals.
I know you're betting on this one. Have to have a strong opinion because both teams, we know what they are at this point. Buffalo really good. The Jets really bad. Buffalo at the crib. Depending on what happens in this Chiefs game today, they could still be playing for the number 1 overall seed, which would be huge. Bills a 10-point favorite against the Jets. You laying those points?
I would lay the 10 with Buffalo. I think that number is too short. I'm not going to say that the Jets have given up or quit. You sort of put up a little bit of fight last week. But, Buffalo, after coming off a tough game versus the Patriots, I think they're coming in. I think they blow the doors off the Jets.
Raiders, Saints. Raiders are a 1-point favorite on the road. Who gives a damn? That's why we have gambling, right? For games like this. Because they have to play out the schedule, so somebody's going to put money on that game. You love the Panthers. You keep talking about how good Bryce Young's been, how much they've been covering the last couple of months. Do they cover the 8 points on the road against the Bucs?
Yeah, I think Tampa Bay is starting to struggle a little bit now. Now, Bucky Irvin's running the football well, and Baker Mayfield getting the job done. But I think that Carolina, and this is a division game, I think that Carolina will be competitive in this game. I think 8 is a good number. I would take it. I would buy the hook, and I would play Carolina plus 8.5, and I would go to the window with that one. Carolina is undervalued now. Carolina in early part of the season, you can lay 15 and you would get the win. But now this is probably a 4 or 5 point game.
They remind me of the Arizona Cardinals from last year. I can't decide if they're a good, bad team or a bad, good team. They cover, though, and they're kind of fun to watch at times also. You know it's not going to be fun to watch. In fact, if you've got bad kids that ended up with Cole this morning, then you should punish them further by making them watch this Tennessee Titans versus Jaguars game. That's, to me, that's not too bad a punishment. But if they're bad kids, make them watch that and they'll learn their lesson. That's just a bad football game. Colts on the road against the Giants. Colts laying 8 in that one. How about the Cowboys and the Eagles? Cowboys on the road, 9.5-point underdogs against the 12-3 Philadelphia Eagles.
I worry about the Eagles looking at this as a get-right spot and just ramming Saquon Barkley up the middle of the Dallas Cowboy defense the whole game and controlling the clock and Cooper Rush turning the football over. But it's one thing about the Dallas Cowboys. No matter how you look at it, they know how to play NFC East teams. Cooper Rush, Dak Prescott, Danny White. Give me the Dallas Cowboys getting 9.5. They won't win the game. The Eagles will control the game, but the Cowboys will cover that number. And shout out to Mike McCarthy. He was on the hottest of hot seats, and it looks like he's going to return. This is a Dallas Cowboy team that is playing for their head coach, and they're doing a good job. I'd bring McCarthy back.
I think they cover, and I would extend Mike McCarthy. I think it's one of those games where they're down by 15 or 16 late, score a nothing touchdown, which is good enough to cover. Dolphins minus 6.5 against the Browns. Packers get 1 at the Vikings. Falcons get 4 at the Commanders. Lions laying 3.5 at the 49ers. And that's it for us today. Thank you to all the boys back in Chicago. For my guy, Corey Parson, I'm the sports machine, Sean Levine, wishing you and yours a very Merry Christmas from all of us right here at the BetQL Network. Enjoy your day.
Thank you, guys. Yep, have a Merry